Today is Friday, March 6th. We are here at the Department of Consumer Affairs on 1625 North Market Boulevard in Sacramento, California, and the time is 8:35. Christina, could you call for a quorum?
Good morning. Jonathan Maddox,
Here.
Ross Ehrlich,
Here.
John Sovek,
Here.
Max Disposti,
Here.
Betty Conley,
Here.
Deborah Brown,
Here.
Wendy Strack,
Here.
Dr. Leah Brew,
Here.
Christina Wong. Here. Everyone, we have a quorum.
Okay, so as we get started, we're going to go through introductions as we always do. But I would like to just take a moment to recognize and welcome three new board members. We have John Sovek. Where's John? He was appointed by the governor. We have Wendy Strack, who was appointed by the governor as well. And then we have Ross Ehrlich, who was appointed by the assembly. So as we go through with our introductions, I would like those board members, I know you did it yesterday, but it was a very small group yesterday. So today that we have a bigger audience, I'd really like you to take a moment, tell us where you're from and a little bit about your background. But again, we are very, very pleased to have what is getting to be a fuller board. So that's very exciting. So let's start over on my left with Christy, and please introduce yourself. And
Good morning, Christy Berger, Regulatory Analyst for the Board.
Roseanne Helms, Legislative Manager for the Board.
Jonathan Maddox, MFT member.
Ross Ehrlich, new member from Los Angeles, California.
John Sovek, new member from Pasadena, California, LFT.
Max Disposti, public member.
Sabina Knight, Legal Counsel.
Betty Conley, LEP member.
Kim Madsen, Executive Officer.
Deborah Brown, public member.
Wendy Strack, public member appointed by the governor from Riverside, California.
Leah Brew, LPCC member.
Christina Wong, LCSW member.
Steve Sodergren, Assistant Executive Officer of the Board of Behavioral Sciences.
Well, welcome everyone. And would any members of the public like to come up and introduce themselves as well? Of course, there's no requirement to do so, but we love to hear from you.
Good morning, everyone. Jan Lee Wong, National Association of Social Workers.
Good morning, Jerry Shapiro, School of Social Work, San Francisco State.
Nabil El Gururi, California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists.
Kurt Whithelm, licensed marriage and family therapist, board member for CAMP.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next agenda item, we have our consent calendar with approval of the May 9th and 10th board meeting minutes. Can we put those both together? Yeah. And approval of November 22nd, 2019 board meeting minutes. Any edits, any corrections?
We talk about corrections.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a...
Can you use the microphone?
Yes. Your microphone was working. It should work now. Can you hear me? Yes. So we're talking about May 9th, right?
We're talking about May 9th and 10th, as well as November 20th.
This is a very simple one. Okay. So page 3, line 21, and that should be Mr. instead of Miss.
Okay. Any other substantive? Nope. Do we need a motion probably to approve those then? Can we entertain a motion here?
I'll make a motion to approve with the small amendment.
And the motion is to approve the minutes for both dates?
Yes.
As amended.
Yes, as amended.
Thank you.
And you seconded, Leah?
I second.
Okay. Here's the vote. Jonathan Maddox,
Yes.
Ross Ehrlich,
Yes.
John Sobek. Yes. Max Disposti.
Yes.
Betty Conley,
Yes.
Deborah Brown,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
I'll abstain.
Dr. Leah Brew,
Yes.
Christina Wong.
Yes.
Motion carries.
So the next agenda item is to introduce our new members, but we've already done that since it was in keeping with our flow. Board member activities. Does anyone want to talk about anything that they've done since the last board meeting? Not much. Not much going on out there, I guess.
That's a,
Oh, it was the holidays. Okay. Sounds like you have stuff going on.
me? No. I mean, we all do in life, but that's nothing.
True, true. And our next agenda item is to recognize board staff for years of service. So, next we have, so the board members would like to recognize the following staff members for their years of service. Their dedication and service is very much appreciated. And of course, I will add that without you, we couldn't do the job that we do. So thank you for all your work, albeit most of the time behind the scenes. So the following individuals have served the board for 10 years. And today we are honoring Roseanne Helms, our legislation manager. You all know how much amazing work Roseanne does for us. Roseanne began her service with the board on April 2nd, 2010 as the legislative and regulation analyst and was recently promoted to the position of legislation manager. So congratulations. And thank you, as always. In recognition of National Staff Appreciation Day, the board members want to acknowledge and thank all the Board of Behavioral Sciences staff for their dedication and service to the BBS. We invite the staff to enjoy the continental breakfast provided in their honor. So, thank you.
And Steve and I really, really appreciate the staff and their work. Without you guys, you make us look really good, so thank you. The numbers and the statistics that follow in my report are reflective of all that hard work that you do to keep us looking good, making sure that we meet our performance measures. We continue to appreciate your ideas, your fresh pair of eyes looking at the way we're doing things, and coming up with the creative suggestions as to how we can improve the efficiency of what we do. So thank you very much. I know it's one day that we get to honor you officially, but we value you each and every day. So thank you.
Please do.
So I was reading the material and looking at the strategic plan, and I was looking at like all this year, the accomplishment, and so I know, the strategic plan has so much to do with, the direction of the board operation. So I just want to thank all the staff that, the amazing work, just really focusing on, on our plan and make it implemented. So thank you.
That we can.
Yes. We now have a budget presentation by Department of Consumer Affairs Budget Program Manager, Brian Skewis, and Budget Analyst JP Fleets.
Hi, Brian.
Welcome.
Hi, Kim. JP's here. Just considering there's only a podium here, I'll figure I'll just come up here and answer your questions. Thanks for your opportunity to present today. I was asked to present a budget update for the board, so I'd like to discuss two main documents. First one being a fund condition, the second one being a budget report. They may be backwards in your materials, but first document is a fund condition. It looks like this.
You'll find it in the budget report under the EO section.
I believe it's around page 50 if you're on.
Yeah. You're looking at pages 43 and 44 of the document.
Perfect. So I guess it would be page 44 then.
Mhm.
The fund condition is essentially a savings account from which each year's budget is allocated or drawn and where revenue is deposited. While there may be sufficient cash in the account, the board is still required to adhere to its annual budget as approved by the governor and legislature. The board started fiscal year 1920 with approximately $6.4 million in the fund. The board anticipates collecting approximately $9.5 million in revenue and has full budget authority of $13,562,000, of which $965,000 is directly drawn and $12.6 is appropriated to the board directly. This leaves a gap of approximately $4.1 million, causing the fund balance to decline. This means the board is spending more than it's collecting. As you know, the board is in the process of pursuing a fee increase. Should that proposal be successful, the revenue would be increasing starting mid-year implementation in 2020-21 and fully actualized in 21-22. With these structural changes, the board's fund will be in healthy conditions, slightly growing for the foreseeable future. Additionally, the Budget Office recently completed the building of fiscal year 2021 budget, which was released by the Governor's Office in January. With that building of the budget comes several adjustments that affect both the board's current year and budget year expenditure authorization. These adjustments are primarily associated with changes in the cost of staffing and benefits, and in the case of this year's budget cycle, costs related to an increase in the rate for the utilization of the Attorney General's office for enforcement activities. The board further submitted a budget change proposal to fund and fully authorize a permanent intermittent staff member starting next fiscal year. All in all, I see a healthy fund balance with sufficient reserves, assuming the fee increase is approved. Are there any questions on the fund condition? Hearing none, I guess we'll go back a page to the budget report. The budget report is a document that provides several columns of information. First of which being prior year information. We compare that information to the budget and year-to-date information. And then ultimately we create projections. That's going to be the sixth column there. It says projections to year end. And then finally there is an unencumbered balance. That's the difference between what the board has budgeted and what the board is projected to spend. At the far right, bottom right-hand corner, you'll see that this year the board is well within the spending authority of their budget, reverting about 4.7%. Generally speaking, 3 to 4% is an area where the budget office is comfortable moving forward, knowing that there's room for unanticipated charges moving forward. So all in all, the fund is in good condition, assuming that the fee increase goes through. The board's adhering to its budget authority. We're here to continue helping the board and board staff to adhere to that budget and continue growing and making any structural changes that may take place. So, are there any questions on the budget report or the fund condition? I'm happy to answer those at this time.
Thank you very much for coming and sharing that information with us.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Let us know if anything comes up.
You bet.
So we're moving on to you, Kim,
Yes,
with our
hello.
executive office report.
As Brian was just talking about our budget for this year, fiscal year 2019-2020, after the adjustments he mentioned, our budget authority is now almost $12.6 million. And as of February 19th, the board has spent approximately 55% of its budget. So that we're looking pretty good. Below that, you'll see that 25% is spent on personnel costs, 24% is general operating costs. This is paper, pro rata, golly, what else? Equipment, just things exam development, just things that we do on a daily basis. Enforcement costs to date right now is 6%. That is really low, but we get bills on a quarterly basis from the AG's office, and so you'll see that number increase as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year. With our current projections that Brian alluded to, we look like we're going to have nearly $600,000 in reserves. This includes an additional expense of $175,000 that we're going to spend on a contract to get all of our documents that are currently on the website ADA compliant. Assembly Bill 434 requires any document that we post on our website to be ADA compliant. Moving forward, since July 1, we've been able to do that, but it's all the existing documents on our website that we need to convert. Steve, do you recall the number of documents that they're talking about?
I think there's approximately 3,000 documents that we have to look at.
That's
believe,
relatively
and
low
that's
in
not just
comparison
one.
to
Yeah.
some of the other boards. We are fortunate because we are projecting such a healthy unexpended balance. We're able to start this process sooner rather than later. And you'll notice that as we have posted our materials, some of the charts that you're used to seeing have changed. That's because they don't necessarily convert over to the ADA compliance that's required. So we're changing some of the look of our charts and the way we're presenting the information, but just know that the information's there, but we have to make it in a readable format so it can convert. We're happy to report we have no funds out to the general fund anymore. They have all been repaid. The total that we had out that has been repaid is $12.3 million. So happy to have that money back. And our fund condition at the end of the year, we're reflecting a 2.1 month reserve. And that reserve balance does include the implementation of the board's request to increase fees. So we're looking good. The Fiscal update, that's the new reporting system that we have for all of our expenses and counting. The DCA Budget Office reports it's continuing to work to close out last fiscal year and recently was able to reconcile fiscal year 17-18 with the State Controller's Office. Additionally, the Budget Office is collaborating with the Office of Information Services to generate reports that we are frequently used to getting under the old system that will better inform us of our monthly expenditures. We understand that those reports are sort of in the final testing stage, so we are hoping to have those very soon. It'd be nice. Flying blind is not a good way to run an office. So any questions on the budget?
I have one, just maybe for education purpose for the new member. So, the $600,000 unspent funds, where do they go at the end of the year?
They go into our reserve fund if we don't spend them. But we have a few things that we held over from the move that weren't critical, but would, really enhance our suite. So we're looking at that. What we're talking about is getting rid of the vinyl blinds that we have, the tilt blinds, and getting what they call Mecco shades to further reflect the heat and the light from the office and lowering the temperature in the office. So that's what we're looking for. There are some empty desks where we do not have the sit-stand desks. Like to purchase a couple of those for staff. The staff that have them are like having them, and reports are it's healthier for us not to sit all darn day. So things like that is what we're going to do with it. But even with those expenditures, we're not going to spend $600,000. There's no way. I could try, but
and I wonder, because we're just really started to reconcile the 17-18 budget, and so is there any way that in terms of the budget, that we can have a more accurate sort of projection, because $600,000 is it's a good amount of money.
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
And so so I'm just thinking that whether there is a way that when we're preparing budget, the ability to just make it more closer, to that, or are you happy with projection?
I'm always amazed at what we have at the end of the year, because about December-ish we look at our budget and go, it's going to get close, and then after the first of the year, the calendar year, we end up having our budget meeting, and then some adjustments are made. Some of the adjustments, as Brian stated, it is employee compensation, but it's also adjustments from BCPs that we get maybe to fund Breeze expenses or some other expenses. So it moves things up. It just revises the number. And the expenditure authority, if you look at it, it's $12,597,000. I cannot spend a penny more of that. So if I go over that, then I've blown it, and you should probably not keep me. But I like having the cush, because you never know what's going to happen down the road. I never know if we're going to get hit with a really high AG bill, because now one of our long aging cases is coming to fruition, and there's going to be additional costs. So yeah, and I would say that probably some of this is reflective of our new exam contract and things that we're not doing exams that we used to. So, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to this. Yeah, but I would rather have too much than have to do what we did last fiscal year, which is hold positions open to make sure that we had salary savings. So.
No, you're good. I'm just checking.
No problem. Any other questions about budgets? Okay, moving on. We will talk about our operations. This is the daily staff work, day in, day out, that they do tirelessly behind the scenes. So we don't have the quarterly statistics that we normally have. Essentially, that's because of the conversion for the ADA compliance documents. But this is a summary now of what we have. And overall, you'll see that volume of applications decreased by 39%. This is very seasonal, traditional, very expected, not out of line of what we've seen in prior fiscal years. And due to the overall, in general, the increase in applications and the existing vacancies that we had within the licensing units, we do have significant delays in processing clinical examinations for social workers and marriage and family therapists. I'm happy to tell you today that the marriage and family therapy unit is now fully staffed with 6 individuals processing just clinical applications. That's processing and reviewing the hours. The social work unit is now fully staffed with 4 full-time people. They're processing applications as well. We took one of our vacant positions and realigned it and made it another AMFT registrant desk. So now we have 2 people doing that. And this is great because this person we'll talk about a little bit later, but the individual will be fully trained by the time the spring graduation application volume hits us, which in general can be anywhere to 6,000 applications or more. So we'll be in good shape to get those in and out. To ease the mind of what the processing delays for our applicants, we've started utilizing Facebook to post our processing times. I want to specifically thank Steve for strongly encouraging me to do this, and then Lisa Selgowski for just really taking the ball with that, our social media information and using it to the best that we can. The feedback on that has been tremendous. I think a few weeks ago I sent you just some comments that we were getting. None of the applicants like the long processing times, but they have the information and they can work with that and they understand it. And as we move forward in the training with the 4 people that we brought on into the licensing unit, you'll see those processing times start to decrease pretty dramatically. And we'll get back to reasonable processing times, I would think, late spring. Our licensing population continues to grow. I know people tell us they're moving out of California, but I would beg to differ. We are now almost 120,000 licensees. Last quarter, we issued about almost 1,400 new licenses. Our renewal activity dropped by 24%, and that's just a cycle of the renewals. Nothing that I'm concerned about. But I am happy to share that most of our renewals, if not all of them, are being done online using the Breeze system, which is a really efficient way of getting the licensee's renewal processed. We still run into the question of, if they wait to the very last minute and that happens to be the weekend that they're doing maintenance on the Breeze system, we can't help them too much. If you wait till 11:59 the night your license expires, you're taking a chance. But we're getting them, and overall, everybody seems to be really happy with the process. The volume of just general applications, name changes, address changes, requests for duplicate licenses, and certifications, those decreased by 16% as well. Given the season of that last quarter, it's not unexpected. Our examination program, a couple of new changes there. Well, at least one major change there. Below, you'll see that we have our second quarter pass rates. They're broken out by overall pass rate and first-time taker pass rate. We administered 4,387 exams last since last quarter. And we conducted 12 examination development workshops from September 30th through the end of the year, calendar year, December. And OPES is in the midst of finalizing the LMFT occupational analysis survey that they conducted. You might recall that the occupational analysis serves as the foundation for our task and knowledge and skills requirements, and based on that document, we develop questions, linking the questions back to those specific tasks and knowledge and skills. And right now, they're finalizing the report. Once we review the report, we'll definitely give you an update on their findings. Our enforcement program, we received 533 consumer complaints and 245 criminal convictions. We closed a total of 732 cases. We referred 43 cases to the Attorney General's office for formal discipline. And as of the end of December, we have 134 cases pending at the Attorney General's office. So, you know, a volume, but not astronomical. We filed a total of 24 accusations and 5 statement of issues, and the number of citations for the second quarter that were final were 60. Board members were busy. You reviewed a total of 35 final disciplinary orders to adopt, approve, reject. And the time to resolve those cases in the second quarter was 461 days. I'll note that the DCA performance goal is 540 days, so we're well under that. So I want to attribute that reduction to 2 factors. We have 2 individuals in our office that I refer to as their nag the dag positions. They basically monitor all the cases that go over to the Attorney General's office, make sure that documents are received, returned, filed timely, and just routinely check up on the status of those cases to make sure that nothing gets dropped. The other thing that's happened is that the Attorney General a few years ago received a budget authority to hire new positions, new attorneys, and so I think that's helping as well. We've also been measuring the average number of days that the case is with the Attorney General. That's from the date it leaves our office to the time it comes back. Right now in the second quarter, that's 357 days, so that's a little under a year, not surprising. And overall, the average number of days for the board to complete an investigation is 49 days. Our CE audits in 2019, we did 738. The overall pass rate was 71%. That means 29% failed. So we still need to continue to get out there and educate our licensees about the requirement to do CE, remind them of the first-time requirements when they're renewing, as well as take it from an approved CE provider, as well as remember your 6 hours of law and ethics. Those tend to be the 3 things that a licensee will fail a CE audit. But I'm happy to report that the associations are on board with getting that message out there, so we'll just keep working at it. And once we hire a new CE analyst, that individual will travel with board staff to all the association events to talk about the importance of CE, where you can find it, and continue to get that message out there.
Kim, can I ask
Yes.
a question? So do we have any ideas what the rationales are for why those who don't pass the CE audit, like, why is that? Is it their lack of understanding? Is it they don't have time? People forget? I mean, do we have a sense of what the rationales are for people not passing it?
I guess in general, my response would be an educated guess. We haven't audited CEs for such a number of period of time, and I think a lot of people are used to not taking CE, and the fact that a few may be audited catches them by surprise. It seems like when a licensee gets a license, it's like, I'm done with BBS, aha, I only need to see him for renewal. And they sort of forget, I think, about their responsibilities to continually keep themselves abreast of what's going on, to further develop their skills. That's my guess. And it's not for lack of opportunity out there. You can go to any association conference. It's there. Everything can be done online. I don't know if they don't want to make the time, can't make the time, or just used to not doing it.
But Kim,
So,
is that,
so can I finish my thought though? So I guess one thought I have is
Mm-hmm.
for us to maybe consider sending out a brief survey to those who don't pass the audit so that
Oh.
we don't necessarily have to guess why they aren't passing the audit. We can get some clear data, which can kind of guide our interventions about how to be more targeted
Okay.
in educating people around CEs.
I was just thinking, so these are people who, it's the vast majority who have nothing, like they have nothing at all. I was thinking there were, like, this person short on 6 hours of the law and ethics, and that person, went to the wrong provider, and this person was
It
like
is.
8 hours short. Are there people who have no CEs?
I still see people with no CEs, but that number is going down. I would say probably, it's usually they're missing a first-time requirement, they're missing a law and ethics, or they took the CE after the renewal cycle, or they took it from an unapproved provider. So those are usually the 4 reasons. But if you're missing all the CE, you get a $1,200 fine, and that gets everybody's attention. But if you're only missing 6 hours, or you took some CE outside of the renewal period, you're looking at a few $100s, maybe $500, depending on the number of CEs you're missing. So I signed more of those citation and fines where the fine is less than $1,200 than I do fully missing all 36 hours. Yeah, there's more people just missing a little bit than everything.
And are some of them, because people are trying to they'll certify they completed it, and then they'll do their hours right after, because they're like, no, my renewal's not for 2 more weeks,
Yeah.
but I'll early renew and say I did it anyway.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Or they're rolling the dice, I'm not going to get audited.
Kim?
Yes.
So do you know if we're using the Facebook platform to sort of maybe on a quarterly basis just send out a general reminder, hey, don't forget the
But
need
it's something we can easily add. I know that we remind them in all newsletters and
We have posted stuff about that, and I know we had a couple things like ones that we have set to post that we can keep posting that. So
Sure. Another thought, just in terms of social media, are we on LinkedIn?
no.
The reason why I ask is Facebook, in my experience, is a platform that many people are either growing out of or aren't using just because of privacy issues. So I'm wondering if we have a very limited sort of audience who actually use it. I know because LinkedIn is a professional social media platform, that might be a place for us to also advertise about CE needs, also advertise about board vacancies as we look at diversifying the board and things like that, just to engage a professional audience, because that's really who our stakeholders are, they're professionals. So we might want to consider LinkedIn as a social media platform to use.
yeah, we can definitely look into that. I know we're also using Twitter. So, yeah, tweet.
But I think Jonathan makes a good point,
He
because
does.
I know among my students, almost nobody does Facebook
Right.
anymore. That's
So passe.
And LinkedIn is, when people are trying to get clients, they're definitely connected to LinkedIn.
Okay. All right, we'll look into that.
And can you hear?
I can hear.
Okay, so I think also, if I like, like the use of the Twitter and, to send out information like about the examination and, the processing time. And I think, in between, just the processing time also, can address like, hey, reminder, audit, we, BBS conduct, CE audit. So making sure that you're in full compliance. Not like, we're scaring them, but I think that education that, that's part of the function.
Right.
I think that is important to remind them too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for a heads up, we are looking at various ways to use Facebook and Twitter, and even instructional videos. We're talking about the other day, putting it out there. Using it not just as a platform for the for the updates on the status of license applications, but so that's what we're really looking at. And the following, I mean, it's pretty good following, 5,000. And it's probably mostly, I'm assuming you're right, it's probably mostly the interns, maybe not people with established practice. So LinkedIn might be, might accentuate
Another
that.
vehicle, yeah.
And backing up just one moment, when we look at trying to find out about the CE audit issue, can we also examine if part of the issue has to do with cost and access. Because you would mention like go to a conference, you can get them, but for a lot of people, conference fees may be out of their reach. And I think finding access and cost things would be important too.
Okay, good idea.
I would also be interested to find out where they're practicing. Like, is this a higher risk for private practice folks and less so for people at agencies? I don't know.
Okay. I think we can probably do that on SurveyMonkey pretty quickly. Okay. All righty. Finally, I'd like to report that we attended 9 outreach events. It's a little quiet in October, November, December, so that's what we did. A lot of them are MFT Consortium meetings, and I think the conference for NASW in San Mateo, we had staff there. I went to the ASWB conference, as did Christina. Camp had a fall conference that the staff went to, and I know that they just completed another job fair with Orange County MFT Consortium. So all well received. Everybody likes that we're there. It's a really nice partnership. So a little bit about our new exam vendor. After the first of the year, we transitioned from PSI to Pearson VUE. Pearson VUE is another test administrator that delivers all types of professional licensing tests throughout the country. They specifically deliver the social work, ASWB social work, clinical, all their exams, as well as MBC's exams. So we've transitioned over to them. They are now delivering all of our California law and ethics tests for all 4 professions. Yes, all 3 professions, as well as the LEP clinical exam and the MFT clinical exam. You know, as with any transition, as much as you prepare and prepare and prepare, there's always a few bumps after your go live date. So we've had a few bumps. I would say staff has done a tremendous job in getting those nuances resolved. One of them is that we're still currently manually entering the exam. We're not now. They're done.
As of yesterday, all the scores are, well, we're still checking and testing it, but they have been automatically coming in. So.
But yeah, so that's the last little bug in the system. So that's, God, that's really good news. So, but as we move down the road, we expect, you know, the exchange of information to go a lot smoother than it did initially. And moving forward, we're looking forward to hearing and reviewing the exit surveys that Pearson VUE does to learn more about the exam experience. Just on our personal tour of the facilities, I think they were going to be a little more positive than what they had previously been experiencing. So the other nice thing is that Pearson VUE, they have a legal team that specializes in nothing but ADA requests. And so we have turned that mechanism over to them. So candidates will be submitting their request for exam accommodations to Pearson VUE directly, and they will take care of it and approve it. Some of the requests that we were getting towards the last year, we're getting, I'm just going to say it, we were in over our head. It's just, we don't have the expertise, and it was really nice that Pearson VUE has a team in place of lawyers that understand ADA very well and what's required, and understand that when you're granting that request, it's to make that exam fair to that candidate as it would be to the same fairness as it would be for a candidate who doesn't need special accommodations. Because what you don't want to do is give a candidate an advantage that other candidates will not have. So, and they're very mindful of that. So we look forward to hearing from them. Finally, in this operations report, you'll see the pass rates by school. Yes. You may peruse. And so that ends my operations report. Are there any questions? Okay. We'll move on to personnel. That's been pretty exciting. As we suggested earlier, Roseanne was promoted to legislation manager. We're really happy we were able to keep her. Yay. Whew. We also hired a few new people. So Lori Larish is our new criminal conviction analyst, applicant on the applicant side. She came to us from the Contractor State Licensing Board. So we're happy to have Lori with us. Kim Covington, who previously was working at the front counter in our office, has now moved to licensing support. She'll provide support to the social work unit. Martin Gamez used to be one of the voices of BBS and the gentleman that you would see as you came to our front counter. He now has been promoted to a clinical social work evaluator in our office. We also are happy to recognize Annie Hughes. She was our fingerprint technician in the enforcement unit, and she also accepted a position to become an AMFT evaluator in our office. Cynthia Diaz joined us from, where were you? Oh, the Department of Housing. And Cynthia, as board members may be familiar with Cindy Diaz, she is now your liaison for all the board votes. We also welcome Christopher Catalano to the LMFT unit. Christopher previously worked at the Board of Psychology and most recently at the Department of Public Health, and so we're happy to have him on board. And Jim Kang joins us. He came from the Bureau of Automotive Repair. He is a social work evaluator and works in the social work unit, and so we're happy to have him. So with all the additions and in-house promotions, we have a total of 6 vacancies, and we're currently recruiting for all of those. Some of those positions we're looking at reassigning to other units where there might be a greater need. Glaringly missing are 2 managers to manage our licensing and exam unit. Steve and I have been tag teaming on that. We are in the process of reorganizing our organizational chart to provide better oversight, more efficient oversight. And once those requests are approved, then we'll go ahead and fill those vacancies. But we expect to be advertising those, I would hope, in the next 60 days. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to acknowledge to the previous strategic plan, we had talked about wanting to take care of the staff and looking at all these promotions and this flow. Of course, the downside is that we've got all these vacancies, but the upside is that people are moving up and they have growth potential in their careers, and I'm just really excited to see, and congratulations to everybody that got promoted.
Thank you. We're real excited. In general, when we interview for a position, my direction is all things being equal in-house. Unless you get an outside candidate that blows your socks off. I mean, they have to be very impressive to come in if they're competing against staff that have applied for the position. So we've also, the hiring process has changed too. It used to be who you know, and I've been here long enough, so I am ready for my promotion. That's kind of the stigma with the state. That's not the case anymore. We actually have to document why we selected the person for the position that we did. There's a screening criteria that they all have to meet. If you don't meet the screening criteria, even if you're an in-house candidate, we can't interview you. We have to score their interviews. There's a writing sample. We have to score the writing sample. And even after all of that, you have to justify why you picked who you picked. So and the primary reason is to get rid of that stigma. I think we've done a really good job of documenting why we do what we do. It's also given us the opportunity to educate staff because, yeah, I know you. We all know you. And boy, we sure would like to promote you. But if you can't get through the screening criteria, if I'm not selecting an outside candidate for the same reasons for the same reasons you're missing in your application, I can't take you. So Steve and I know the other managers have met with the individuals who are interested in positions. They talk to us about it. We do mock interviews. We even, if it's some of the jobs require statement of qualifications, we'll review that. I want them to not be excluded because they overlook something. I really don't. And I think we're making great strides in that. And the quality of the applications, especially coming from staff, has really improved. So, yeah, keep up the good work, guys. Yeah. But thank you. Any other questions about personnel? Okay. The strategic plan, we just updated it. You'll see that we've completed some tasks, the portability bill, some of the other items as well. But if there are any specific questions you have on the strategic plan, I'm just going to let you review this.
It's just truly impressive. You know, this is only like 2020, but it looks like their major work has been done, and those that probably there's some areas that it's probably going to be like still work in progress. But like I commended the staff, and I want to commend it, the leadership, and the administrative staff that really wonderful job. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Leah?
I'd just like to tag on as well. And I think that when you look back on all of these accomplishments, and I appreciate that we're not going to run out of virtual space. So I really appreciate that every time something is done, whether it's small or it's big, that it's documented. Because then that goes back and supports the budget. It goes back and supports all of the new hires that we need and the vacancies. All of it just has one fluid circle. And it's very nice. Thank you very much, you and all of the staff, for making all of this happen. You're welcome. Thank you.
So I had a comment, and then Leah. Steve, thank you for all the work on the breeze, the ongoing work. I do love-hate relationship there. But I do have a question that one of the goals, and it's not due until July, but is to expand the functionality of breeze so that people can really get information about their license. And I mean, where are we with really, it seems like the system has incredible capacity. I'm just wondering how are we making progress on that?
We are making progress. It's not something we've actually talked on. Oh, she's not here anymore. Lisa Sigelski is going to be taking over a little bit more of the breeze stuff from off my plate, which is nice, thank God. But we are looking right now. Some of the functionality we have put in place. We just put in, and we haven't really broadcasted yet because it's not working totally great. But you can apply for initial licenses now online. We keep looking at adding the re-exam transactions, and the big push, what we're looking at now, is wanting to we want to make it so the registrants or the applicants can do that. They can look online and they'll be able to see what deficiencies they may have in their application, and or what statuses or letters and such that are in there. It's not as easy as it sounds. It requires really a lot of different aspects. We have to go in and look at our business process and change kind of what we're telling them currently, what like the deficiency phrases we use now. It's working with staff to kind of change that whole business process at the same time looking at how to make that work in Breeze. Luckily, there's other boards that have gone through and are using Breeze similarly, so we can copy off of them. But we are looking at that, and I'm hoping we'll make some progress, big progress in that by the end of the year. I don't like to be too optimistic on this stuff anymore, so maybe it will be by the end of the year, but I don't want to say that. But we just actually met the other day too and talked about that. So
it's a work in progress.
It is a work in progress, but it's not being left behind. And we actually are. Some of the problems we also have is the amount of Breeze work. That's a big project that I've been wanting to do for 2 years. But we also have a new project that we're working on with Breeze, which is more in the background to better the system. It's not as flashy as for the user, but it definitely helps out the processing and stuff in the background, which is creating a whole new type of license types in it's background information, but we're trying to go through that process. So that's going to take up some time. But yeah, my goal, I envision, is I really want to see that platform where somebody can go in, they can, first of all, apply online for their registration or their clinical exam, and then they can follow that and track that. We send them automatic emails when something happens to their registration or their application, and it gets really streamlined. So I'm thinking it's something that can be really, I think we'll make definite progress this year. within 2 years, I think we could have a pretty good, solid platform like that. So.
Thank you, Steve. Leah?
A couple of thoughts with that, and then my question. So one thought is, when we get to that point, that would reduce the number of phone calls and emails the board gets, right? Because a lot of times,
No, it would definitely better the communication, and that's what.
because sometimes people are like, I sent my stuff in and nothing has happened for 6 weeks and everybody else's stuff in my group is done. So they can look, they can see that, nothing is there, that's a legit call, or everybody is 6 weeks behind or whatever. Yeah.
And staff is very creative and very customer. And that's what I like about our staff. Very customer oriented. I know once you get through to us and you're able to contact us, it's amazing what we do for you. So we do have in the background, irregardless of Breeze, staff is usually is implementing like customer service things. Instead of like waiting for the letter to be sent out, they'll actually email deficiency letters. We're using emails more to try to speed up the process to get that communication going. So in the meantime, as a patchwork, we're doing things like that. But Breeze is a good platform. I mean, we just need to utilize it more. So.
And then I was thinking you also have to add the supervision stuff into it before, what is it, probably 2022, when the supervision laws, where they have to start registering themselves. That's just 2 years away.
So, yeah, it's coming up.
Yeah, 2 years.
Yeah, no, we have to start working on that now because with the amount of capacity and stuff, it can take
a couple of years.
Well, not a couple of years. I mean, it can take a couple months, 6 months or something to get something like that done. So
something to put on your. I'm always doing presentations on law and ethics and how the laws change. So last meeting, I got all the years of when things are due, and I'm like, 2022, Breeze better be ready.
I'm going to defer to you then on that.
And then the other thought I had, we had talked about in our strategic plan under enforcement 3.3, educating DAGs and ALJs about addiction. And I was just wondering if you had thoughts about how that might look, because I really think that could save a lot of time when we're rejecting ALJ proposed decisions.
Well, now that we have Anahita Crawford as our board liaison, and she's local, she's actually here. Hi, happy to see you. That's on my radar, because now that she's local, it's going to be easier to coordinate any kind of presentation and how we educate everybody. So that's on my radar. I want to get something in the works by the end of the year, calendar year. So
it would be nice to have a couple of, like, over the course of 2 years, like in-person things, and then webcasting it, and then recording those webcasts. So, because a lot of times those groups don't really understand that if you have a 0.25 blood alcohol level, that wasn't just a bad decision.
No.
Okay. Yeah.
No, it doesn't. So no, absolutely, it's on my radar. So.
It was, well, I said it wasn't just a bad decision. It is a bad decision, you're right.
So Kim, I might have missed it. So can you explain a little bit more about Anahita Crawford's role?
Oh, yeah. So Anahita is a Deputy Attorney General in the Sacramento office. We had previously had representation out of the Los Angeles, Southern California offices, and her role primarily is to work with us and be the expert for all the DAGs in the state when it comes to BBS. And provide his guidance and work with Sabina and work with me and work, just sort of have more of a cohesive approach to what we do from a disciplinary standpoint. I do know Anahita on a personal level. She and I have worked a couple of notorious cases together. One that lasted the duration of she was with her child, went out on leave, and came back, and here's that case again. And as fate would have it, my sister was her legal secretary. Really small world. So it's from my perspective, it's nice to have somebody here in Sacramento it makes it easier to meet. It makes it easier to coordinate what it is that you want to have happen in terms of educating, all the DAGs, all the administrative law judges, and just to give them the most information and the most updated information regarding our licensees, the practice, ethical standards, violations, why we view them differently than perhaps another entity. So we're looking forward to that. We're just getting our feet wet, but it's going to be fun.
So Anahita, you're going to work with the ALJ office also, right? Because I think the part of the issue is not just about the DAX.
It's both. It's both.
Because the Office of Administrative
Right.
Administrative Law,
and I would say this about the judges. I mean, we can give them, because they all have our disciplinary guidelines. They're all right there. They have the same information. But, they're an adjudicator. And it's their esteemed professional opinion that this is how it should be. I also, and I respect that. The other thing I have observed in the umpteen million years I've been doing this, judges can be really hesitant to impose what we would view as appropriate discipline on a licensee. And so it's just, it's an educational piece, and we'll just continue to work on it.
Sounds good. It's actually better than having nobody, to be the liaison. So I want to thank you. That's going to be a tough job, but but I think it will be very beneficial, for the staff and for the board members. Yeah.
I think some of you might remember Christina Thomas. So if you want to think of it in terms, Anahita is our new Christina Thomas. So job-wise.
So that's it on the
That's it on the strategic plan. If there are any more questions on that?
Any more questions? Any questions from the public on the strategic plan? Okay.
All righty.
So let's move on to sunset review. That is coming up.
Hello, number 3, sunset. So the board, it's our turn again to appear before the legislature and basically present to them an overview and some detailed information regarding the operations of our board since our last sunset review, which was in 2016. So when I wrote this memo, we did not have an official sunset date yet, but I did receive word late last week that we are scheduled for March 24th. So I'm trying to think about how to say, anyway, here it is. I don't have fancy words for this. So, Betty and Steve will appear before the committee members and respond to all the sunset questions. Typically, your executive officer would be there. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be, but we are meeting next week to review any kind of questions, preparation. And before everybody has a moment of angst, let me assure you that because this was going to be my last sunset report that I would have to do, I tasked Steve with coordinating all of it. Steve knows that report, all capitalization, lowercase, periods, commas, data, stats, so he knows it thoroughly and can be an authority to speak on it. I have every confidence that it's going to go well. The other thing, too, is because we've been successful in the past of getting a 4-year extension, which is the max that you can get, we've been able to answer and respond to any prior issues. They're all resolved. We have no current issues that we've been made aware of. In general, I think we're going to have a very successful sunset report, and I've had no indication in any of my conversations with any of the committee members that they have any glaring concern about how we're doing things. I think it's reasonable to expect that we might be questioned about the fee audit. That's normal. And maybe a couple of operational things, but in general, we have always tried to do the right thing for the right reasons. And I think we've been beyond transparent in a lot of ways. And we've had great staff work. The board has worked really hard. And I think that report really reflects that. And I really just don't see a lot of downside. So I'm pretty happy.
And I know this has been said before. I feel like I need to say it one more time for the record, that that report is really well done. It's thorough, it's detailed, it's readable. And I just, once again, want to thank all the staff, Steve, everyone that worked on that, because it is really a good product, and I feel very confident, I say that now, I feel very confident going in with that report. It really answers and addresses every possible concern, so thank you again. Christina, did I see us?
Yeah, I just want to tack on to that. I was I was the board chair for the last sunset reveal. So compared to all the other boards, I have to take pride on that, our wonderful operations. And so, when we can go in and out within 24 minutes, and the other boards can take up to 3 hours, then, I think, that really is, I think the sunset report is kind of like going in there, a process for the Senate to look at our, our operation. But I think, the lack of worries really is also another indication of how well run, our board is. So, I think it's almost like it's just a time to go, hey, I got a straight A, can you just rubber stamp it, And so I think that is, there's no, I feel full confidence that, things will be okay. And so, and it's open to the board members, right?
It is. You can
Yeah, so
attend.
if board members want to see, how the process go, it's definitely, a wonderful education process. And you want to support and speak up for the board, you're more than welcome to. I think Deb, were you there last time? Yeah, I think Deb, Patricia, yeah. And so I think, it's a good opportunity, for the board members to speak up for the board and to, show another support and the evidence that, we are, working well, as a board.
We are. And, we invite the associations because, the overarching question is, should we continue as we are for another 4 years and regulate this profession on a bias? Yes, please. But so, it's helpful to have the associations come up and, express if they have concerns, please tell me now so that we can respond to them. But generally to show support, that we continue regulating the professions that we do. So. I'm pretty proud of the report and the work that we've accomplished. I look at the sunset as an opportunity to educate and inform the legislature about what we do, how we do it, and if there's something that they want us to do differently, I'm open to that. So.
Any additional board comment?
No.
Any public comment on this issue? Thank you, Jen Lee.
Janley Wong, NASW. I also echo that the report, the draft that we were looking at, plus the past year's reports are always outstanding for this board.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. The only thing I want to mention, it doesn't have to be in this report, but it just seems like the costs for having a license, applying for a license, and keeping a license seems to go up maybe a little bit, probably consistent with inflation. And I understand that as you get more licensees and registrants, you have to bring on more staff. That makes sense, because if you don't, you get criticized for long processing times and slow response to consumers and licensees. So I get that. And bureaucracy by its nature is always going to be expanding if its business is expanding. So it's going to cost more. But I also appreciate Steve and the board's work on automation. And the promise of automation is that at some point, you will yield some dividends and reduced labor costs. So I'm hoping that when you work on your automation projects, you see if you can build out a goal, which is to find some way to reduce costs so that the increase in costs over the years will slow down a little bit from where it is today. Because we do get comments from our members and non-members about the cost. of maintaining their license and applying for their license, et cetera. So maybe if you could match up automation with a goal of reducing or slowing down increases in costs, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the professional examination services. Can we just address that item, and then I think we'll take a break after
That
that.
sounds good. Yeah, so we, as I mentioned in a previous report, we contract with the National Board of Certified Counselors to administer the National Clinical Mental Health Counseling Examination for licensure, for LPCC licensure. The contract allows for us to have periodic reviews of the exam to assess it and evaluate it to make sure that it's still relevant for use here in California. So in your packet is a summary of a confidential report that was provided to board staff regarding OPS's evaluation of the clinical exam for LPCCs. And the executive summary outlines the steps that they took. Essentially, we have to, any exam that we administer or offer, we have to ensure that it's legally defensible and it's valid, and it meets the testing standards that are out there in the industry, as well as what's required under Business and Professions Code, Section 139. So OPES looked at all the documents that were relative to developing the exam. That would be the occupational analysis, that would be the exam questions, how those questions are performing, and based on their review of that particular component, they determined that that clinical exam, it does meet the standards here in California and professional standards, testing standards throughout the country. So happy to check that box. And then secondly, what they did is that they convened a panel, a group of LPCCs here in California, subject matter experts, to make sure that those questions actually link back to the occupational analysis and really do assess what's happening out there in the field. And happily, yes, it does. So long story short, we'll continue to use this national exam for licensure for clinical counselors, and it does meet all the testing standards, and it's developed in the same rigor as if we were to develop it through OPES. So that's our report.
Oh, that was
quick,
short.
yeah.
Well, since Roseanne is going to have the floor for the next many items, why don't we go ahead and take a quick 15-minute break and come back at 10 o'clock?
Okay, thank you.
Let's go do some yoga.
And Roseanne, we are going to move item number 19 to the last item before public comment. So we are going to take the other items first because that one is a little bit more complex. So Roseanne, you want to move into the Policy and Advocacy Committee recommendations?
Yes. So the first item that is up is a discussion about the notice to clients about filing a complaint. And this is, the board and the Policy and Advocacy Committee have been discussing this for a few months now, and I believe have reached a resolution. And so a little background, because we have a lot of new people. Last year, the board sponsored AB 630, and that bill, effective this coming July 2020, requires unlicensed and unregistered individuals providing psychotherapy to provide their clients with a note about where to file a complaint with the therapist if they're in an exempt setting, if they're not under the jurisdiction of the board. And then if they're a licensee or registrant of the board, they need to provide a notice saying that provide their clients with a notice saying a complaint can be filed with the Board of Behavioral Sciences. So the board may wish to consider two clarifying amendments to that particular provision that was in AB 630. So the first amendment that we started discussing originally was in last summer when AB 630 was running, the Senate Committee on Business Professions and Economic Development had suggested an addition to the language, basically for the unlicensed and unregistered individuals who are in exempt settings. They had suggested just adding a little bit of additional language as a paragraph in italics in your packet, basically saying if you don't know if your practitioner is licensed with the board or not, here's the contact information for the board so that we can look it up and find out for you. So there's a paragraph there. It would allow them with an additional resource to check if their therapist was licensed or not. At the time that suggestion was brought up, it was already the summer. It was too late in the legislative session to take the suggestion back to the board for consideration without having AB 630 become a 2-year bill. So what the committee decided that we could do was they decided to let the bill proceed, and staff agreed to take the amendment to the next board meeting that coming November. So the board discussed the amendment at that meeting and suggested some minor changes about to the language of the notice as well, just calling a counselor a practitioner. So you see that reflected in the packet in attachment A. But something a little bit more substantive that needed additional clarification also came up for discussion at that time, at the November board meeting. And that was a discussion about the timing of when the notice is provided to clients, because current law says that the notice needs to be provided to clients prior to initiating psychotherapy services. However, the point came up that in most cases, that's fine, it's not an issue, but there are occasionally situations where there's a crisis situation, and it might not be feasible or appropriate for a therapist when presented with a crisis situation to stop the delivery of immediate services to provide and discuss a required notice such as this. So staff recommends that the board consider clarifying the notice requirement for both licensed and registered individuals and unlicensed and unregistered individuals. The proposed amendment states that the notice must be provided either prior to initiating psychotherapy services or as soon as practicably possible thereafter. This provides clarity that in a crisis situation with a new patient, that the practitioner does not need to stop everything, their urgent services, and provide the notice. Instead, they can provide the notice as soon as possible after the crisis has been addressed. And the suggested amendment to allow the notice to be provided as soon as practicably possible is similar to language that's already used in the penal code, and I've included an example in attachment B of the penal code, and it's also used for elder and dependent adult abuse in the welfare and institutions code. The board also may wish to discuss whether or not it would be helpful to include language stating that the delivery of the notice shall be documented. I included that in the proposed language as well because our telehealth law currently requires a patient's consent for telehealth to be documented, so it seems appropriate, but if you would like to discuss, we could. This was all discussed at the February Policy and Advocacy Committee meeting, and the committee determined that the proposal should proceed to the board for consideration as a legislative proposal.
Any discussion? Thank you, Leah.
I like the language. Makes sense that we pulled it from other language. I do agree that we need to have that documentation because what good is it if there's no proof of it if somebody makes a complaint? So for the protection of the licensee as well as the client, I think it should be documented. And looking through everything to the extent that just seeing those tiny paragraphs, it made sense to me.
Any comment from the public? Then
I'm happy to make a motion to direct staff to make any discussed changes and non-substantive changes and pursue as a legislative proposal.
I'll second that.
Christina?
Jonathan Maddox,
Yes.
Ross Ehrlich, John Sovek,
Yes.
Max Disposti,
Yes.
Betty Conley,
Yes.
Deborah Brown,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Dr. Leah Brew,
Yes.
Christina Wong.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Perfect. So that'll either be pursued in our omnibus bill this year or possibly in our sunset bill, if that's possible too. We'll explore that. So moving on, just another update on our Policy and Advocacy Committee meeting. We had a discussion about our Policy and Advocacy. Well, the Policy and Advocacy Committee had a discussion on our supervisor work settings bill. That now has a bill number. It's AB 2363, and this is the proposal that we worked through in the exempt setting committee to define various types of setting definitions. And there was just one further discussion item that we wanted to have at Policy and Advocacy Committee to make sure that everybody was on the same page with what the bill is doing. The goal of the setting definition bill proposal is to reduce the confusion that often arises when pre-licensees may or may not work based on how a business is structured. And while the board approved the bill's language and directed staff to pursue a legislative proposal, it wanted one item to go back to policy and advocacy. And that item, the bill proposal requires that in a private practice or professional corporation, the supervisor or an associate must be employed or contracted by the associate's employer or be an owner of the private practice. And they also must provide psychotherapeutic services to clients at the same site. That providing services at the same site is a requirement that's unique to a private practice or a professional corporation. And the question that we wanted to just make sure that we discussed was whether it would be appropriate to extend that requirement to supervisors, associates, and trainees in all non-exempt settings and not just a private practice and professional corporation. And the Policy and Advocacy Committee decided that due to the uncertainty of how extending this limitation to all non-exempt settings would affect the supply of supervisors available, that the proposal should be left as written for now. In other words, the restriction on requiring supervisors to provide therapeutic services at the same site would apply to private practices and professional corporations only. And then if concerns arose in the future, then the topic could be reconsidered. The Policy and Advocacy Committee agreed with that assessment and found that no further action was needed.
Any comment? Jonathan?
I would support that recommendation just because there are a lot of smaller agencies that don't have the resources to provide clinical supervision on site, and that would adversely impact trainees, associates, or even their capacity to recruit employees to maintain sustainability to maybe provide care to a particular community. So I think this makes perfect sense that they would be able to recruit supervisors from outside of their agency to support that need. So this makes perfect sense.
Leah?
I concur, and there's that additional protective factor now that the committee put together about them having to sign some sort of contract saying that they have access to being able to review files, et cetera. So I think that agencies or private practices and corporations are uniquely different in that way. So I think I like it as it stands.
Okay, good. Any public comment?
Nabil Al-Ghouri with CAMPT. I want to applaud the BBS for taking this action to clarify these settings because we get lots of calls from pre-licensees, from applicants for licensure, with a lot of questions about the settings. And so this is a really important issue. I also agree with the changes to not include agencies with the requirements for supervisors to provide services there because of the impact it could have on supervision and the workforce for California for behavioral health. So CAMPT will be supporting this bill, and I appreciate the effort that the BBS has put into this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make one quick comment? So
Yeah.
I guess that we talked about that, that the staff is going to, monitor, the complaints and kind of like to see, how that rolls. And if it's necessary, then with a little bit more data, to look at, the impacts, whether, right now we're worried about the unintended consequences, but really down the road, if it's really prove that that we need to change, expand, that regulations to apply to the other non-exempt setting. The door's not closed.
Yeah, exactly. I really just brought this up as an abundance of caution, just to make sure that there was no items that we hadn't discussed, that were foreseeable that we could that could potentially cause issues. And definitely the setting definition issue is something that we get, as Nabil alluded to, a lot of questions on. There's a lot of confusion out there. This is a first attempt to sort of resolve the issue. We think it'll be really helpful. The door is always open for some fine tuning after the fact, depending on how it goes.
I just have a little thought about fine tuning. Someone had called me, one of my alumni called me, and they do telemental health at a private practice, and the supervisor said you can only conduct your telemental health practice out of the office of the private practice office, and it can't be done, say, at another location because of the way they interpreted this information. So I had called Kim and said, is that true? And she's like, not necessarily, right? Because the supervisee is seeing clients physically at that location, but has done telemental health sessions out of their home, for example.
Right. The law says the wording just changed with AB 93 a couple years ago to it has to be where the employer regularly permits business to be conducted. So that kind of the hope there was to leave the door open a little bit. So if the employer regularly allows that and has oversight in place to work with that would be permissible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item 1145, the Garcia bill.
Yes. So this bill, the board actually has a active support position on this bill. However, it was introduced about exactly a year ago. So we wanted to see if we wanted to discuss reaffirming the position. The bill became a 2-year bill last year and almost died, but it did live, and it is now moving again. And just because the board has a strong history of support of this bill, and it's been struggling a little, we wanted to have as strong of a position as possible. So this bill tries to solve an issue that exists with the Child Abuse, Neglect, and Reporting Act, and that requires a mandated reporter to make a report in instances where he or she knows or reasonably suspects that the child has been a victim of abuse or neglect. It defines sexual abuse for purposes of CANRA as sexual assault or exploitation. And it further describes sexual assault as consisting of several different actions. Those include rape, statutory rape, and then incest, sodomy, and oral copulation. And then it also declares that any person who participates in an act of sodomy or oral copulation with a person under 18 shall be punished by up to 1 year of state prison or county jail. And then the law goes through and has other sort of age ranges that are reportable for various actions. This bill would specify specifically that voluntary acts of sodomy, oral copulation, or sexual penetration are not considered to be mandated reports of sexual assault under CANRA if there are no indicators of abuse, unless the conduct is between a person age 21 or older and a minor under age 16. And what the author is attempting to do is to clarify the law concerning feedback that the requirements for mandated reporters for these types of acts, their requirements to report, are confusing, inconsistent, and discriminatory. Some mandated reporters interpret the law to mean that consensual sodomy and oral copulation is illegal with anyone under 18, and it requires a mandated report as sexual assault under CANRA. And they note that the same reporting standards do not appear to comply to heterosexual sexual intercourse. There are also contradictory opinions that the law does not read that way and that those acts are not treated differently from under the code. So there's really just a lot of confusion out there, and the law is really confusing is the bottom line. And it's such an important requirement to report that providers have to take seriously that it really should be more clear, has been the argument. The board examined this issue back in 2013 when stakeholders expressed concern, and we had asked our DCA legal office to give an opinion. The DCA legal opinion found that that CANRA does not require a mandated reporter to report certain instances of sexual conduct between minors differently than others, and they cited some case law and court findings. But the bottom line is that it's still, a lot of people are still really confused about it. And that could have hurt clients and, cause problems with therapists being able to do their jobs and gain trust. The Board of Psychology, I should note, did several years back seek an opinion from the Attorney General's office. However, there is a case currently it went to the Supreme Court. It's been going to the Supreme Court for several years now. It was just heard a few months back, but the Supreme Court basically kicked it back to a lower court. And so bottom line is an AG opinion has not been issued, and it's probably not anywhere near being issued. So we don't have that. So that being said, a little bit more history. Last year, the Policy and Advocacy Committee wanted to support the bill, wanted to include some additional language possibly about the reportability of filming or sexting or other technology between minors. So staff discussed that concern with the author's office, and their take on it was, yeah, we get that. We will consider it, but the bill's actually having a lot of trouble due to the misconceptions it already has getting through, so it might be better addressed in another vehicle at another time. So the board went forward last May with an official position of support, and the bill is still moving.
So thank you for your work on this. As someone who taught the required child abuse mandated reporting class, I can personally testify to the fact that it is an ongoing concern and people are always questioning. And I think Dr. Caldwell did a nice job a few years ago of presenting some of the challenges that the law as written causes. So any board comment at this point? Leah?
Just a quick procedural question, assuming that everyone still agrees, there's no vote or anything that we need to do.
I think we do need to take a vote.
Do we want to vote?
I'd like to have usually when I write a letter, I state the date that the board took the vote. And
Because our previous board action was over a year ago, I think what you're looking for is something current to show current support.
Yeah. Okay, so would the motion be something like to
Support.
Take a position of support on this AB 1145?
Yeah.
I could make that motion.
Okay. I think we need to look for public comment, but we can take the motion and then entertain public comment before the vote.
I would second that, by the way.
I think this is a very, important clarification, and especially, for the, for the population, for the younger population now, that they are more creative than the older. So, so in terms of, how you define sexual abuse, and the methods of, that they want to have their intimacy, I think that's always, very, very confusing. And so for me, I'm in support of this bill, but, I just want to reiterate that, the importance of just really helping all the other mandated reporter, to clarify that, the intent and the method of, sexual intercourse, should be distinguished. And I think this bill, would definitely help to, to separate that.
I just want to add to that. Sorry. I think what we're dealing with, I'm also in support. What we're dealing with is just years of practice, where there was an exclusion between heteronormative relationships, and that currently is carrying on to nowadays. I have incredible, as you know, I run an agency where a lot of providers reach out to us because they report things that are absolutely consensual, where abuse is not even close to be. And a lot of you get in trouble for that, even though providers are coming from a good place of support and they so-called cover your assets in relations to report anything you can, so you are, not exposed. If there is an investigation, it has caused a lot of issue to a lot of our young LGBT folks. So, unfortunately, one thing I feel that the law is this is the best we can do, because it really comes from a time where there was a lot of distinguish between heterosexual relationship versus others. And we're trying to do our best to undo the damage. I think that reflects this intent. If it was for me, I would totally change the whole possible bill to really be more explicit. But I feel happy, content with this, halfway solution. So thank you.
And as another person who specializes in working with LGBTQ populations, I also want to go on record in support of this bill. One of the things that we talk about too is the education aspect. And often in schools, what they're teaching is the letter of the law as it's written. And they're not teaching the intent of the law as been interpreted since then. So a lot of students are leaving their schooling systems with the idea that this must be reported. And so what this bill will help do is backtrack to that letter of the law moment in teaching and allow us to start something new going forward.
And I actually just have a question. I'm just curious. Is there a reason why the age 21 or under 21 is utilized as opposed to maybe 18? Because there can be a broad developmental gap between someone who's actually 16 and someone who's 20 and 364. So I'm just out of curiosity, why 21 versus 18? Do we know, or?
I think it's the 6-year thing that's also part of the law, because there's a general, like, how many years apart is too many years apart? Yeah, and when can it be considered consent? I mean, that's the best guess we've ever come up with.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Caldwell.
Good morning, Ben Caldwell. I'm a licensed MFT. It is hard to believe that was 7 years ago.
Ben,
I know.
Can you hold the mic out? Ben, I'm sorry, could you take out the mic and hold it? It's just hard to hear.
Sorry. I was saying it's hard to believe that was 7 years ago, that initial discussion of this. Really appreciate your taking this up again to do kind of affirming a very strong stance on the bill. While it is beneficial to be sure that we have the DCA legal opinion from 2013, there are a number of graduate instructors and supervisors and attorneys that are indeed continuing to advise students and practitioners that should you encounter an instance of these forms of consensual sexual activity among minors, that the safest path is to treat it as a mandated report. And so providers feel very stuck because from a moral perspective, they recognize the difference between what is truly abusive conduct and what is not. And they feel like they're being put in a position where they have to report conduct that is genuinely consensual and not abusive. So having a change in the law to actually clarify this, it would be an overstatement to say once and for all, but to give folks a little more peace of mind that no, it is not the intention of the law, it's not the intention of the BBS for you as a practitioner to be put into that very difficult position, would be a good outcome. So thank you for taking this up again. Respectfully encourage an aye vote.
Ben, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So are you aware, and I agree with you, are you aware of whether or not programs or people are teaching practitioners and students how to utilize an effective decision grid about how to make a determination? Even though the law clarifies it, there may be circumstances where you need to dig below the surface and really try to determine, is this person being coerced? Are they being groomed? Yes, they said yes, but do they have Asperger's? I mean, there's a lot of different considerations. So are people being trained sort of how to think deeply about this if there are some concerning considerations in a particular case?
Well, I can tell you that in the courses that I teach and the courses that Kurt teaches and Darlene teaches, that yes, people are taught to look at this a little more deeply than just the letter of the law. However, I'm also aware that there is a wide range when it comes to the degree, the nature, and the quality of education on that topic. So I would not necessarily presume that that is the norm.
Okay. And the reason why I ask is, I think it's important to protect consumers, to protect practitioners by helping people think through not just what does the law say, but sort of what are the specifics of this case so that we can make an informed and correct decision to protect everyone involved. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Jonathan, an answer, in, at least with the LPCCs, they follow the ACA Code of Ethics, and the ACA Code of Ethics are very clear that the best interest of the client always comes first. And that they use a decision-making model, and that the model should involve consultation or supervision and documentation.
So if I can just add a little bit to that, from personal experience, the law that we're talking about is going to apply to all mandated reporters. And while the intent and the training for licensees, the license holders, is going to be perhaps more in-depth, what we have to look at is the fact that this law is being interpreted all the way down the chain for anyone who is a mandated reporter. So that whole issue of trying to, evaluate the intent, and you get a broad base of people who are looking at liability, and they're going, I'm going to take the path that's going to put me with no liability on this issue. So without really clear guidelines for not just our population, but for all the people out there who are mandated reporters, you're going to end up with a huge impact, a societal impact. So I just wanted to kind of, Jan Lee.
Jan Lee Wong, NASW. First, I want to thank my colleague, Dr. Ben Caldwell. I was here that day 7 years ago when he brought it up, and he was the lone voice at the time. So we owe a debt of appreciation and gratitude to Dr. Caldwell. I also want to thank the board for taking this on and taking a support position. California leads the entire country in areas like this. I remember years ago, this board supported a ban on conversion therapy for minors. And today, in many very conservative states, there's legislation to do that ban. So the progressiveness of this board and of this state and of its behavioral health clinicians is impressive, and I want to thank you all very much.
Kurt Whithelm, marriage and family therapist, and I do teach at university level. There is plenty of evidence that suggests that clinicians who are very early in their careers are the ones who are most likely to follow the absolute letter of the law. And I really express my appreciation for adding this level of nuance, because in interpreting one singular law without holding into account what is best for the clients, especially for early career clinicians who are most likely to be working with youth clients, this puts the onus back into good clinical decision making and not just following black and white letters. So I express my appreciation.
Nabil Al-Gharouri with CAMFT. As many of you know, CAMFT receives thousands of calls a month about legal consultation. And this issue is one of the most frequent calls. Mandated reports are a very common call. We take calls every day on this. This type of clarification will be incredibly helpful. And when this is passed, we'll be educating all our callers, all our members on this topic. So we really appreciate this. We are in support of this. Thank you.
Before you sit down, how do you advise clinicians when they call about this particular issue?
When they'll call about this, we do go through the law and explain the intent of the law, but this kind of clarification will make it even better.
Okay.
And so we can point it out, point the law out to the member where it is, send them a link, and that will help them.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a follow- Is there like a brief or a summary like on the website that if a particular organization wants to have a training for their staff, they could actually print that, take it, and have a conversation with their clinicians to support that? I mean, is there anything on there that would be useful like that?
We publish articles in our magazine. The magazine may be only for members, so
Correct.
So that may be accessible. So I'm not particularly specific with, or I'm not particularly aware of every article that we have. We probably have something on this because they've written articles on hundreds of topics. So we probably have something on this, but this will be even more helpful, this clarification. Thank you.
So I'm thinking that I'm reading at the list of the organization who support this bill, and I'm thinking that this is exactly a wonderful time for the stakeholders to stand up and maybe write letters to the author's office to express the support, because I think especially the more that in the support position, and I think that also shows that the voice from the public that this bill is worthwhile to go through. So so that's I would really encourage the individual organization to really address that. So I know Leah said that we're ready for take a vote, right? Or at least to do the motion.
We
So-
have a motion on the floor, and we have a second. So we're ready to call for a vote if there's no further discussion. I think we can call for a vote.
Okay. Jonathan Maddox,
Yes.
Ross Ehrlich,
Yes.
John Sovic,
Yes.
Max Disposti.
Yes.
Eddie Conley,
Yes.
Deborah Brown,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Dr. Leah Brew,
Yes.
Christina Wong. Motion carries.
All right, Roseanne, we're on to 1616.
Yes, so AB 1616 by Assemblymember Lowe. This has to do with Department of Consumer Affairs boards and expunged convictions. And the reason that I brought this to this meeting instead of the May meeting is because this is also it was a gut and amended 2-year bill, so it was covering a completely different topic. And it was gut and amended in the second house, so it has the ability to move really quickly. So I wanted the board to be able to have a position if it were to begin moving quickly. This bill would require DCA boards, upon a licensee's or former licensee's request and provision of a certified copy of expungement, to update the website with notification of the expungement order if the person is relicensed or reapplies for licensure, or to remove the posting of revocation from the website if the person's license was revoked and they're no longer licensed and they have not reapplied. So under existing law, a defendant who has fulfilled the terms and conditions of their probation and been discharged prior to the termination of their probation, or if a court otherwise determines in its discretion that relief should be granted, to allow withdrawal of a plea of guilty and to allow the defendant to enter a plea of not guilty. Or the court can just set aside a guilty verdict as well. For either type of case, the court must dismiss the accusations or information against the defendant and release them from all penalties and disabilities resulting from the offense. There are certain convictions that are not eligible for this. Mainly those are vehicle code violations and certain convictions involving sex offenses with minors. Specified state agencies, including this board, must provide information on its internet website about the status of every license issued. The public information on licensees that must be provided on our website includes information on suspensions and revocations of licenses and other related enforcement actions. Currently, there is a requirement that the Medical Board of California post information on the website about their current status of the licensees for all current and former licensees, and this includes the Medical Board posting whether a license is presently in good standing, just like we do, active temporary restraining orders or interim suspension orders, current accusations filed by the Attorney General, any felony convictions, any misdemeanor convictions. But the current law also requires the Medical Board, and we don't have this, for any required postings on a felony or misdemeanor conviction to post notification of an expungement order and its corresponding date within 6 months of receipt from the licensee that it happened, and they have a certified copy. So this bill would basically extend that to the other DCA boards. A DCA board must update the website upon receiving the copy of expungement order within 6 months. If the person reapplies for licensure or has been relicensed, we would have to post the notification of the expungement order. If the person's not currently licensed and they don't reapply for licensure, that we must remove the initial posting on the website. And the bill also requires that the person, once this posted, would pay a fee to the board for doing so. The author is attempting to reduce employment barriers for people with previous convictions who have been rehabilitated. It's part of an ongoing effort to do this that I think you're all aware of. So that's the intent. I did talk to my counterpart at the medical board because they already have this similar provision, and she indicated that they have one staff person that handles it. That it's not really an additional workload where they would have a fiscal impact. And so it would be minor absorbable. The medical board has about 150,000 licensed physicians and surgeons, so they're bigger than us. So just a little bit more information there. I also talked to our enforcement unit about this. They saw no specific concerns. They did think that the wording was slightly odd, that the board must take the information on the website. If the person reapplies for licensure, that would mean there would be an active application. The timing of that is a little bit odd, but there is a 6-month window that we have to do it. So chances are that person may have moved along in the licensure process. Also, a little bit strange is the wording that we must take it down if the person's not currently licensed and does not reapply for licensure. That's kind of an active, ongoing activity. So, I mean, they could reapply at any point. But they still didn't have any major logistical concerns other than it being a little awkward. So I would expect that we might see this bill start to move and be tweaked, and we could discuss it again in May, but I wanted to bring it to your attention now.
So I think when I was reading exactly, Roseanne, what you said, that portion of it, I get very confused, because whether it's about, is this bill addressing for the population who are under probation, or whether it applies to all of them, or whether, then when they reapply, whether they are those subgroup that they're on probation and yet they reapply. So I am just very, very confused about who they're targeting. I mean, in terms of the language, I understand the intent. And so, yeah.
And I agree.
Do I support the intent? Right, you agree, right? So,
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just my
It's not just you.
confusion. Okay.
And yeah, that's one of the reasons I asked enforcement, because I kind of had the same, hunch as I was reading it, but and they sort of have, everybody kind of has the same feeling. And if the board wishes, I could definitely point that out to the author and to say, it's kind of maybe a source of confusion.
Right. So to answer Leah's question, do I support the intent? So I think, if this is a fact, this is a fact. If they expunge, they expunge. So, and if the public needs to know in order to help them find employment, absolutely. But on the other hand, their expungement doesn't necessarily mean that get, the probation, or let me just assume that, are off, the board's probation. And so, so I can see that, that's definitely one step to show the public that this person, has done something to rehabilitate, and in the court's eye has, it's, the record has been expunged. And so, if it looks like if medical board said that this is not a whole lot of work, I don't know if the licensee, if they're, the percentage of the licensee on probation is, similar to us, because I think that's also a very important thing. So, so I'm very interested in knowing, the impact of our, for the staff. And yeah.
Doesn't seem like it's going to be a big impact, but I think I'm wondering if there's any value in working with the author's office to communicate those concerns, because certainly want to respect that they got the conviction expunged, and certainly want to update that record, but I am a little curious if they're on probation, if we're sending a double message. Hi, the expungement's here, but they're still on probation. So yeah. And the other thing that had me concerned was, we deny an applicant and then they might reapply, but they have a year window, according to the government code, to reapply. So, I mean, how long do we hang on to this stuff as well? I don't know.
I actually was wondering if 2138 is going to have any impact on this issue.
I suspect that this is sort of a companion bill to that.
So it's, okay.
Yeah.
Because they are addressing the same concerns and the same issue.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Is there a way to maybe specify on the website that, well, someone might have an expungement, they might still also be on probation to the board? I mean, I understand that might be confusing. I do think it is important that, the fact that someone has an expungement be available to the public. I mean, sometimes that's someone's only way to demonstrate they've been rehabilitated. So, for someone with a criminal conviction, it's meaningful to them. But the wording, I agree, is a little, that probably should be cleaned up a little bit to, as far as the A and B sections. So,
Yeah. I'm assuming you're talking about probation as in our probation?
Yes.
Right. So all of our discipline documents are posted on the website. So I'm assuming that there's ability to do various documents within somebody's license profile. So we would have the or whatever is required to be posted, as well as their discipline documents.
was the concern that consumers might look online and say, well, wait a minute, the case is dismissed, but they're on probation, and think that probation refers to court? No?
Right.
Yeah,
right.
possibly, but
My guess is yes. I mean, while we all understand the nuances
Right.
and the differences, and the general consumer may
a
not.
lot of people don't read the titles of the
And
documents.
yeah, and they don't read. So,
I'm also wondering too, I mean, as a board, and I personally have a very strong conviction around social equity and ensuring that people aren't, people who have been sufficiently rehabilitated have second opportunities or third opportunities to rebuild their lives. But I am concerned that if someone was a licensee or registrant and they have had their license revoked, that we take that down. I mean, I'm wondering, is that in the interest of public protection, that we remove that as if it never happened? Because in actuality, it did happen. In actuality, they did go to prison, but we are building mechanisms into our systems and structures so that people can still be hired and get jobs and things like that, even if they have a criminal background. So I don't necessarily, I guess I'm wondering, how does that protect the public if we take it down? Because there may be people who may choose to, for whatever reason, advance their clinical career and still see clients or still do work, and the public should be able to go in and say, hey, no, this person was a clinician, but it has been revoked, and people should know that.
I agree.
So Jonathan, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the license history remains online. So the revocation would continue to show on the website.
Okay, so then what is this
Their
saying?
status is-
That's not what this says.
It says remove the posting of revocation from the website unless they reapply. I guess I'm just
So
confused about what
Sabina,
that means.
isn't there license history?
Right.
So can you clarify that?
I think that's only about revocations, because I think somebody pointed out, I think Roseanne, anybody can apply within a certain amount of time. And so if they don't apply, is to remove it, right? But we don't.
Yeah. It says
That's just
rem-
revocation. So if you have probation, it's going to be on there, your accusation is going to be on there, your statement of issues, all of that is going to be normal, your probation order, like we
Sure.
see. That only addresses revocations.
Right, but I guess that's why it's a bigger concern, because they've actually engaged in activity that required their license to be taken, and the public should know that.
And within a year, they can apply after a year.
Revocation, if we revoke, it's a couple of years.
A couple. So
Yeah.
it's got to remain, because
But it looks as if if the person is not currently licensed and does not want to, so if they've had their license revoked, they're not currently licensed, then you have to remove the initial posting on the website that the person's license was revoked.
And if they don't reapply, then it never goes back up. And my concern is, for
I
public
see.
Right.
protection, why
Right.
doesn't it just stay up
Right.
there
Right.
as
I think-
in perpetuity, just so the public is protected from this person if they may choose to engage in services without a license? So
Correct.
I'm concerned about that.
Correct. And I think that
exempt
that is a
setting.
point that we can share with the author's office and maybe work with them on some technical language assistance.
right, you can support if amended, you could talk about what amendment you would like to see in it to address that little portion of the bill. And Roseanne and her staff can work with the author's office on trying to get
Right.
information on that.
And another reason why I say that is that, let's say this licensee leaves California, moves to Missouri, and Missouri runs a check and say, have you ever been licensed in another state? He says, no.
Yeah.
And they go to our website and it's not there.
Right.
But this person actually has a criminal history. So I think we need to consider the broader implications of someone's criminal convictions and what that means.
Okay.
Any further discussion down here?
And actually, I want to just do a slight carry on with that, because I think there's also this piece of the puzzle where we have people who are practicing very similar aspects to what licensees are doing, and may have gone through all of this education, been revoked, and then continuing on with that process in an unlicensed manner. And what this would do would allow the public to also understand that this person who is identifying and advertising themselves in some other aspect previously was a licensed person and it was revoked. And I think that's a piece of information that would be very important for someone who is seeking one of these other types of services to have access to.
I see that, yeah.
I agree.
Any public comment on this issue? Do we need a motion?
Yes, ma'am. My motion is to turn on my microphone first. So, no. I guess that the support, if amended, would be better than object, Yeah, okay. So I'll make a motion to have our position to support if amended and for this bill.
We need to specify the
Yes.
amendment, I think.
Right, we need to specify what
And then
amendment
direct
you'd like.
staff to work with the author's office for technical and substantive changes, non-substantive changes.
No,
We need
this would be substantive.
It's good.
Actually,
goodness.
I think what I was suggesting, and we're actually asking that the revocation remain on the website in perpetuity for public protection.
So the license history remain on the,
Yes.
okay.
On the website.
I think that would do
Regardless
it.
of what that license history
It could be
is.
just they've had a valid license
Right.
that expired.
Right.
And, yeah, they let it go.
Yes,
They let
whatever
it
that
go.
is, to include revocation.
So I would, Roseanne, why don't you repeat what you have jogged down so far?
I have support if amended, and work with the author's office to request that the license history, including the revocation, remain on the website.
In perpetuity.
As it is now, I mean.
As it
right
is
now,
n-
We don't have any time limit when we take
Right.
stuff down.
Okay.
So I second that amendment.
So no further
No,
comment?
I'm just, sorry.
Matt?
I totally agree with the amendment. I wonder if we could just give an intro of the intent of the board. It might come across as pretty much we amended, which is substantial because it might look like the board is disagreeing with the intent. So I wonder if we can just, which is not the case, I wonder if we can just, a small intro that says that, well, we share the same, the intent of the bill in regards to not punishing people, rehabilitating people, but then there is obviously the editing.
Yeah, and in my letter, I can give the example of the other state, and somebody brought up about
Unlicensed
similar
practice.
practices
Yeah.
like with life coaches and stuff like that.
Perfect, makes sense.
Okay.
As long as it's there, I think I will feel more
Yeah,
comfortable.
I'll work
with
on
that.
a letter and we'll send that.
Thank you, Roseanne.
Public protection standpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Roseanne, even in exempt settings, right? So you leave your license and then go work in a university, but you've been revoked for having sex with a client or pedophilia or something, yeah.
Yeah.
And the
Okay, so we have
timing-
Christina,
Sorry,
additional
just-
comment?
Just a little clarification, and the timing for, how long we post our own disciplinary action hasn't changed.
No.
Really, it's just about, adding that expungement. So, so I think the clarification is enough.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, no further comment. Christina?
Jonathan Maddox,
Yes.
Ross Ehrlich,
Yes.
John Civic,
Yes.
Max Disposti.
Yes.
Betty Conley,
Yes.
Deborah Brown,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Dr. Leah Brew,
Yes.
Christina Wong.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. 2028?
Yes, so 2028 has to do with meetings of state agencies, just like we're doing right now. So current law, as you all know, we have the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. And all state bodies, including this board, are subject to it. The bill proposes 2 changes to the Bagley-Keene Act, which require all state bodies to post all meeting materials online at least 10 days in advance of a public meeting, which we don't always necessarily do. And then it would propose a change to allow the public to comment on any agenda item of a state body's meeting, regardless of whether the item had already been considered, and public comment allowed at a committee meeting of the state body. And we always do that anyways, so that change is not really affect us, but I'll talk a little bit about it as well. So right now, a state body that wants to meet, they need to provide a meeting notice on the internet website 10 days in advance with a brief description of the business to be attended to. So you see that in the form of our agenda. It provides that all writings that are public records are distributed to members of the state body pertaining to an agenda item prior to or during a meeting, and they must be made available for public inspection at the meeting if prepared by the state body or one of its members, or after the meeting if it was prepared by somebody, maybe an audience member, and brought to the meeting. Under certain circumstances, a state body can take action on items of business not on the posted agenda, but there's a pretty high threshold for that. The state body would need to determine by a 2/3 vote that there's a need to take immediate action, and the need for that action came to the state body's attention after the agenda was posted, and notice must also be made to all national press wire services. So a very high threshold. It also permits a state body to call a special meeting in certain circumstances when compliance with the 10-day notice would impose a substantial hardship. Allowable circumstances do include pending litigation, considering proposed legislation, a legal opinion, or certain things with license examinations and applications. But still, there's a high threshold for this. Notice must be made to all national press wire services. There needs to be a 2/3 vote about the delay that it would have caused a substantial hardship, or that immediate action is needed to protect the public interest. So this bill would require us to not only have the agenda posted, but all meeting materials 10 days in advance. And then the state body would only be permitted to discuss or writings or materials related to the agenda items only if it has complied with this requirement. This bill would also delete a section of statute permitting a state body to disallow public comment on the agenda item if the agenda item has already been considered by a committee composed of members of the state body at a public meeting where the public already had the opportunity to comment on the item. And that item is not a concern here. We've never done that in the 10 years that I've been here. But the part that's a little bit more concerning is the 10 days in advance for the materials. The office's intent, they're trying to close loopholes in the Bagley-Keene Act for supporting documents. Most of the board's meeting materials, it's feasible to post them 10 days in advance in a meeting if we're discussing like a law change that we're writing or something like that. However, the bigger concern is the effect that this could have on the board's ability to take positions on legislation. In a typical year, about this time of year, we always analyze between 15 and 20 bills that affect board operations or public protection or its licensees. And then we present that information to the board, and the board weighs in on if they'd like to provide technical assistance or take an official position. The legislative process moves really fast this time of year. Things are just starting to pick up in March. All bills have been introduced. There's a 30-day window when they can't be amended, and then at the end of March, they're all going to start being amended all at once, right in time for our April Policy and Advocacy Committee meeting. So, right, for example, this year, that meeting is on April 9th. The meeting notice will have to go up at the very last few days of March to meet the 10 days. And it can be pretty difficult to capture all the bills. There might be a few that are gotten amended in between that time that we can't even put on the agenda because it hasn't been 10 days. So, and in the meantime, they're all being amended again and again sometimes. So when that happens, we have to analyze the bill. If we have the bill on our agenda and it changes, we have those 10 days, we can still analyze the bill and talk about it because the materials aren't out necessarily yet, or we can bring updated materials if needed. Realistically, the sort of the emergency measures probably wouldn't be very feasible because they have a really high threshold. If the bill was serious enough, it would probably require us to call another board meeting right after our board meeting, which is pretty costly. And so that could be a bit concerning. So one suggestion that I have to this is to request the author's office allow an exception to the 10-day posting requirement for legislative amendments and corresponding bill proposals, so that the board can still continue to have a voice in matters related to public protection. The reason I'm bringing this now is because it's sponsored by the California Nurses Association, which is pretty powerful, and just the level of concern, and I think it would affect the legislative process for the board.
I concur. And Roseanne's generous in saying that when the legislation is analyzed, staff, she means herself. She means it's, what Roseanne can do. And I can tell you, as we approach the May meeting, in years past, there are days that the bills have been amended like the night before, and Roseanne has been able to provide you the most recent update to the bill to allow the board members to vote on a position. This bill's going to, if it goes through as it is intact, we're not going to have that anymore. And essentially, it's really going to affect our ability to weigh in on legislation that affects the populations that we regulate. So I think her suggestion of excluding the legislative material is valid.
I totally agree with it because, now the intent is to really inform the public. And yet when you really look at, the fact that the 10 days, this is what I'm thinking, so if they stick on that 10 days, it means that anything happened between, the meeting and the post the day, you should not even be talking about that. And that actually absolutely go against of the purpose of the meeting, because you don't have the most update information. And so I think the intent is good, and yet, the implication is crazy, it's absolutely, not helpful, even for the state to run business. And so, so I personally think that, I think that carve out, for the legislative, it's good. I can see that, like the administrative updates, for the board updates, this is more internal, that will be just fine. And yet, anything more time sensitive, more, that we have to get a pulse on, the whole the political climate and where it stands. I think that is a worth area, to have an exception.
Wendy?
So I support that.
Sure. I just had a question. Is this prohibition against written materials being updated? Like, if this went into effect, would we be able to get a verbal update on the changes from staff, or is that prohibited as well?
It doesn't seem to prohibit a verbal update. However, it would be pretty difficult without the materials to explain the language changes enough that the board could probably feel comfortable taking a position.
Because you also can't bring a hand carry.
Yeah, you can't bring a hand
She
carry.
can't show up that day and say, oh, here's what changed last night.
I can't
Okay,
show you
and
the
she
bill.
wouldn't be able to like post it on the screen or anything.
She
like
could,
that. Okay.
but yeah, it might be a little difficult. It might be more cumbersome.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
So I have a question about, right now, there's no one in opposition.
Well, it's fairly new.
It was
So do you have a sense of if we were to support with amendment, whether we could anticipate that other boards might concur? I'd hate to be the lone ranger hanging out there, making it look like for some reason we don't want full transparency, which we obviously do, and we're completely in support of the intent, again, the intent of Bagley Keene, which is to make sure that all of our stakeholders and all of our consumers and everyone are aware of what we're talking about, and that it's open and transparent. So I absolutely agree with everything that's been said. I'm just looking at the optics of it, and just wondering if you have any sense of if other entities are going to.
It's really early. We don't usually, most boards are not we don't even usually take positions on bills this time of year, so it's pretty early. We could watch it until May. I have alerted the DCA legislative unit about it. They're monitoring it. Legal is aware of it. I have reached out to the author's office via email to the staffer and asked them if that, expressed my concern and asked if that's their true intent, which I didn't receive a response back, which is a little concerning. So
It's on next Thursday, structural pest control. We'll be discussing this also at their meeting next Thursday. Barbering and cosmetology does not have it on their agenda for Monday.
So it's really new.
Yeah.
Very new. I would suspect that it would not surprise me that any active board, active in legislation like we are, would not have some concern about the 10-day posting. I mean, we can all live with the agenda. That's easy. We can do that. But and as it was also mentioned, the operations report, we can make that happen. I am more concerned about the legislation and the fluidity that occurs during that season. And I think Roseanne just identified, is it 25, if I'm remembering correctly, bills that you're looking at right now?
approximately.
Approximately
We'll
25.
narrow that. I mean, it's
Might narrow it.
early, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's a lot of bills to monitor, and any change that's significant that would really impact favorably or not favorably impact our stakeholders and the professions we regulate, they rely on us to advocate for them because they're not there in that cycle. And if we lose our ability to do that, I would really, I think that's an unintended consequence. And I think that we need to, strongly advocate for at least this carve out for this particular portion. So, and I'd be willing to go to the mat on that. I know it's the Nurse Association, but yeah.
I'm surprised that they don't share the same concern.
Well, I think that,
Actually, can I
sometimes-
ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Do we have any insight as to why they have chosen to support?
To sponsor, I do not know
Okay.
why the nurses, it's kind of odd. Sabina, do you have any insight?
It would not be unrealistic to think that there was an event that, just prompted them to sponsor something like this. I don't know that with any certainty, but generally when these things come around and they have such restrictive language, there's usually a backstory, and we're not privy to the backstory.
Just one thing, I'm sorry for that. I totally share the concern that Betty was sharing. At the same time, I think it's okay to take the lead on this. We have a track record where our work on transparency and openness has been really documented over and over. We happen to be the first people. I wouldn't be concerned if we word in the right way. That's exactly what Kim was saying in regards to making us able to actually be a supportive agent or body of that legislative effort versus we don't want transparency, of course. So I wouldn't be, but I share with you that concern. I think it's very valid. But
So I think it's going to be, the devil's going to be in crafting the language to explain
Exactly.
that, supporting the intent, but the unintended consequence would be a lack of responsivity and if is there any more board public protection, right?
Yeah, so I wonder if the position would be more like object, or no, not oppose. Not oppose is so, because we talked about the difference of, how much teeth, you have, to engage in the whole advocacy process. So, I mean, I think, whatever the position is, it's okay. But I think I just want to have, stay more involved. And I think the other option is that, I'm looking at the next PNA meeting, which will be in April 9th. And so we have about a month, to watch, if the board members, don't feel comfortable, or comfortable. I don't know. I'm just throwing out another option and about the timeline.
And I'm not, I mean, it's a board decision. I would just voice again that I'm okay with it, but I'm already feeling uncomfortable about even support with amendments just because of the optics. And I think coming out in opposition would be an absolute red flag.
No, I'm fine with that. I'm just checking, whether
Okay.
we have more involvement.
And
I'm not
it's a
saying that
board, it's a
going
board
away.
conversation, but that's my personal take on it. And Wendy, then Leah.
Oh, no, you don't see Deb.
Oh, sorry, Deborah, Wendy, then Leah.
Okay, okay, I'll just real fast here. I think that clarifying, which is what we're doing right now with a very early proposal for a bill, is exactly what we should be doing and being able to articulate that back. And I think that the unintended consequence that even the legislatures themselves has not considered is that when you have an author here and you make amendments and then other people sign on, all of that would all start coming to a screeching halt and would be delayed. And I don't know that they want to be delayed. We can't even take up your amendment. We can't even listen to your authorship. Sorry, it's beyond our 10 days. And so I don't know that they've even considered what kind of constraints they're putting on themselves, the legislators themselves. So I think we're in the very beginnings, and I think to get out of the gate with just concerns about where we might want the legislators to look is probably, I would think, a good thing, just because every board's going to come up with a different thing that maybe it's just privy to that board. But at the end of the day, I think that's why we see these bills, right, that are 400 pages long, because that's what's happened. And I think we're just on the front end of it, that's all.
And I share the board's concerns about being able to be responsive in a legislative timeframe. I think I share Betty's discomfort about appearing to not want to be transparent with the public. And so I guess I'm looking for sort of a way to thread the needle here. And is there a way for us to not take an official position, but even just ask the author a question about this, and then maybe bring that response back to the policy committee in April, and then we have some clarification, because we're not even sure here about why the bill was created. And so I think we need a little more information about where everybody's coming from, and then I think we can find the right direction forward. My guess is they're not intending to limit our ability to weigh in on legislation, and so maybe even just some inquiries might help address those issues without us being really the tip of the spear on this one.
So I think my comment was related exactly to that. However, if we take a support if amended position, we have teeth. If we just ask the author questions, we have no teeth and we have no skin in the game. And it would be nice to have skin in the game early in the process so that we can vote on it again if we needed to in May. But if we just start asking questions, they may not take us as seriously. It's just a possibility when we've done that with previous legislation.
So we have some interesting dialogue about whether to get in front of it or whether to wait and see how it rolls. So, Kim?
I would advocate getting in front. There's nothing wrong, because, I mean, with the support if amended position, I mean, we're saying we understand the intent, but here are our concerns. And I think that's the best that we can do. I don't think that's an adversarial position by any stretch of the imagination. I agree with Wendy's statement. It's probably not their intent to lose the expertise of the regulatory board to weigh in on matters that are going to affect those stakeholders. But that's what we need to be doing. If we wait, I think we run the risk of this continuing forward, and then by the time we get to vote in May, we may be a little late. and we are not able to actively engage in dialogue with the author's office. And I would prefer to do that than wait.
Well, and certainly something to be said for getting in front of it is, while there are no other boards currently weighing in with the same concerns, there's only 2 boards currently supporting it. So if we got in front of it, made the concerns.
This
Oh, associations, sorry.
Mhm.
But if we got in front of it, it may be that other boards start taking some positions.
Yeah. My guess is that all the other boards would have the same concern.
So, and we will have a report also, at the PNA meeting, right? Just kind of like,
Right.
keep the public posted for, the
Right.
change.
But it would certainly get our foot in the door in terms of a conversation and a dialogue.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for your patience.
Ben Caldwell, licensed MFT. Your points are well taken, particularly about the unintended consequences here. I'm not advocating a particular position on the bill, but just would raise the issue that legislation is not the only fluid kind of issue that you all deal with as a board. Just as 2 examples, COVID-19 is not on the agenda today, but if it was, the context of that discussion would be very different today than it would have been 10 days ago. And so to be limited to only materials related to the context 10 days ago would be a significant impairment to discussion and appropriate action. And another example, and Roseanne, I don't know if this has actually happened this way in the past, it may be a hypothetical, but if something is put on the agenda because of a stakeholder concern, all of us as other stakeholders then see that issue on the agenda, look into it a little bit more, and maybe submit a letter to the board, written comments to the board on that particular issue. It's really nice when those letters make their way into board materials. And of course, there's the question of timing. There's a letter in on time and all that kind of good stuff. But if the letter is in on time and can get into board materials, that can facilitate more informed discussion than getting a response back from you all of, well, this is great, but we can't actually include this in board materials for another 3 months. So it might be worth pushing back a little bit harder beyond just the legislation issue, which is certainly critically important as well.
And we've actually done that before with some of your comments and some of Camp's comments that they've weighed in if they're not going to be at the meeting. We do that occasionally. And another example is our regulations today, because that's kind of a fluid process. There are things, legislation is the most common example, but Ben brings up a very good point.
Exactly. You're eliminated from the discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think that term, it's a fluid environment, and we need a process that can respond to that without impairing our ability to be current. Jen Lee.
Jen Lee Wong, National Association of Social Workers. I'm looking at the Board of Registered Nursing's website. They have a board meeting March 11th. They only have the agenda posted as far as I can tell. So I would be disturbed if I were a nurse and saying, gee, the meeting's March 11th, I might go. It's in Chula Vista City Hall, but all I have is the agenda posted. So first of all, this board has always been very transparent and posted virtually everything they could well in advance. I'm a little shocked that another board is not that way. And I'm not suggesting this, I'll just say it. I know board executive officers talk to each other, so maybe some additional information could be developed if certain board executive officers talk to each other.
It may be that we are looking at a sledgehammer approach to this that's resulting in a good intent, but unintended consequences. Deborah?
I just have one clarifying question for Roseanne. So would this include, and I bet Ben has been a guest speaker before, presentations would all, when Dr. Caldwell did a presentation, maybe a couple of years ago, and you used a PowerPoint, would his PowerPoint have to be
It would have to have been turned in 10 days in advance.
Okay, and as presenters, we know that we are tinkering with that thing almost up till the minute we present.
Right.
So that would too have to be put
Yeah,
in
it would have a
writing
due date,
somehow?
and we would say, Ben, you have to have this, in 2 days before our deadline, because we've got to get it posted up on the website in accessible format.
Right. And right now, 2 days to get the packet up is not sufficient time, because we have to submit the packet up to OIS, and then they have to go through it to make sure it's ADA compliant. So we try, our goal is a week before we want it posted at least. So, I mean, the ADA requirement adds another layer of challenges. Yeah. And usually, our goal internally is to have everything up at least a full weekend before the meeting. There are some times we can't, but that's our goal. That's our goal. Wow.
Leah?
I'd like to make a motion, because it sounds like we're all on the same page, so that we can move forward. If we're ready for that.
Go for it.
To support if amended. And the amendment we would request is that not all documents have to be posted within that 10-day period. And I'd like to direct staff to work with the author of the bill to make any non-substantive changes. And what else? What is it? Is that it? That's good?
Is the exception only applying to legislative?
No, to everything.
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 So you,
Is,
Well, isn't that an
Well, yeah, I mean, is that an overly broad amendment? I mean, I feel like that sort of walks back most everything in there.
Isn't that the core content
No,
of the
I-
bill?
I-
So
no.
aren't we in actuality opposing
There's
it?
some special meeting provisions in the bill also that, like Roseanne pointed out, don't really affect you guys. There's a couple other things that aren't really here nor there in the bill.
So we're supporting it if amended to remove the 10-day requirement.
Or to somehow make exceptions. I'm not sure what
so
your
I
guys'
think we
pleasure
need
is.
to craft this language
Yeah.
a little bit more, so
not-
I don't know what we do. We have a motion on the floor. Do we need to withdraw that motion so we can continue to discuss this? I think we might need to withdraw
Yeah,
for
I think
now.
so.
Yeah.
Second.
If there's no second, it
There's no
dies.
second.
So, sorry, Leah.
No, that's fine. I'd like to hear from Roseanne what
Yeah.
your thoughts are, please.
But to be completely honest, if there wasn't the concern about the transparency, the natural position for this would be an oppose unless amended, because the content of the bill, the majority of it, we are opposed to. Support if amended doesn't really have any teeth. Whether or not they care if we support it or not, they probably don't, to be honest. They're going to care more if we oppose, but then there is that issue of being the first one out the gate. So what we could do, we could take a support and if amended and say that there's the alleged concerns and and give some other examples. We could try to have a discussion with the author's office again.
They haven't responded.
They haven't responded.
I feel like that, why we're tiptoeing on this situation. So
oppose
I think
unless
it's,
amended.
what I'm feeling the discussion direction going, it's a straight oppose. So I think, if we just say that oppose if amended, just like what I said before.
Unless
amended.
amended.
And
Unless amended.
oppose if amended. And then I
Unless
think,
amended. Unless amended.
unless amended. Okay, that's even stronger.
And then we
So-
provide them what amendments we want.
Right, exactly. So, because, the spirit, we support the intent, but the implementation is, it's just not possible.
Right.
So I think I would love to make another motion.
But hold on, if we say oppose unless amended, and then we want to put in what the exception, what's our alternative to the 10-day requirement? How are we going to decide that? So if we vote on a motion now, don't we need to also figure out what that exception is?
Yes.
Right. So I don't know
Right.
if we're ready to make that motion. Do we know what the alternative is going to be?
Well, I know we want to exclude the legislation material, comments from stakeholders after an agenda item is posted.
Presentations.
Presentations.
Pretty much everything.
Pretty much everything. So I think we just, yeah, I think the meeting materials, I think it's very hard for meeting materials to meet that requirement of 10 days. It really is hard.
So to
maybe
be
it's
devil's
just in a
advocate.
post? Was it just in a
like with the
post?
gentleman's
So-
comments about, if something came up in the last 10 days, it seems, counterintuitive to have that deadline on it.
So it seems to me that is a straight oppose because we're talking about like the majority of the material that is not applicable to this, apart from just the board operation. So I mean, I think the board operation part of it, administrative part, all the reports, that's fine. But anything else, it's should not be subject to that 10 days. So I mean, I can say that maybe that if we want to give more specific example, we can just say everything else we oppose except say like the administrative part of the board operation.
What
So can I just,
Or we can just go straight oppose.
so my concern is going back to Jan Lee's point, which is what's to stop boards then from posting an agenda with no substantiating documentation. So if there was a way to say that the documents need to be there, the materials need to be there, but that last minute non-substantive change, I mean, I don't know, I'm trying to.
Not,
It could still
they're
be
all
substantive.
substantive.
What about if we say oppose if amended, and then in the description we said the board shared the intent of transparencies. However, the 10 days requirement defeat the same purpose, is actually defeating the purpose of transparencies for the reason that we just shared. I mean, something really simple without going to the laundry list, but it's very evident that we're trying to prevent the dialogue stopping 10 days prior because we are not aware of the materials that they come after. So I wouldn't see that to be problematic in a way of just sharing that.
So Roseanne, I have a question for you. So let's say if we straight oppose, versus oppose unless amended, what will be the difference, for your interaction with the author's office?
No voice with them.
If I were to write an opposed letter, I would talk about how we oppose the concept, the first concept, not the second one, about, that this is going to affect, and I would give examples of the ledge material, stakeholder materials after the agenda and presentations. If we were to oppose, it really, we're going to explain the same thing either way. I think it's nicer to give them a chance to correct it. And we don't even necessarily, I can state the concerns. I can say what Max said. Basically, we share the intent of transparency. However, this is going to hurt our ability to be transparent in the legislative process with stakeholders who want to weigh in with comments or materials after they've seen the agenda, with individuals, stakeholders wanting to make presentations and
Or modify
and we
a
can just leave it at
presentation.
that, and let them figure out a way to address it. We don't have to spell it out for them necessarily, or we can, but we can just leave it at that and see what they do. And there is time still. I mean, we're going to look at this. We can look at it again in April, and we can tell them that, this is how we feel about it right now. We'll take another look at it at our board meeting in May, and decide whether to affirm that.
So I would like to make a motion
If I may.
for the oppose unless amended, and
We'll have more
and to
discussion.
include Max's wonderful, beautiful statement, to direct, for that statement. Roseanne actually just repeated.
Okay. So I think our concern is our ability not to provide the most recent information available.
Yes.
So that's the concern. It's not that I have to post, not that we're required to post information 10 days in advance. It's that we can't modify it or revise it or give the most updated information. So there needs to be a mechanism to allow us to do that. Because right now with the agenda, when we post it, I can't revise it, done. But meeting materials needs to be exempt from that requirement in Bagley-Keene. I'm happy to put whatever we have legislatively online, but if something changes before a board meeting, we need to have the ability to react to that change. The stakeholders need to have the ability to comment on something that's posted on the agenda. So if we can exclude the meeting materials from the you can't revise it portion of Bagley Keene, then I think this becomes more palatable for all of us. So does that make sense?
I actually think you got at what I was trying to come up with, which is we need to address the concern of making the materials available, but not that they can't, but that they can
Right.
be revised.
I think that hits the nail on the head.
Right.
We need to be able to revise it. We can make bills available. If the bill's on the agenda, if we have a bill, we can make that available. But if it changes, and 3 or 4 of them always do, we need to be able to consider that. Otherwise, there's no real point in discussing it.
So that does get at both, I think, the concern that Jan Lee brought up, which is no materials being posted, but the revision.
I second that motion.
I have a problem with the motion. I need something crafted. I can't use.
Yeah,
a motion.
I think it
What
was.
he said, what she
So the
said.
motion is to oppose unless amend, and the amendment is to support the idea to post materials within 10 days, but allow modifications for the most recent, up-to-date information prior to the meeting.
And could we have Roseanne maybe wordsmith that a little bit?
She can make it nicer. And then, and for staff to work with the author on that and make any non-substantive changes to language as well.
That's my motion. And that's what Leah seconds.
So who made the motion?
I do.
And you seconded, Leah? Do you have the language? Does anybody have the
Maybe,
language?
maybe we let Roseanne?
Can I repeat it back?
Roseanne.
Okay. So our motion is to oppose unless amended, and to say that the board is supportive of the idea to post materials within the 10-day requirement. However, but that to be able to allow modifications so that the board can have available the most recent information within that 10 days for the discussion.
And I would direct that specifically to meeting materials. So maybe we could shorten it to say, but exclude or allow for revisions to the meeting materials.
I think that's a good way to put it. Allow for revisions to the meeting materials to, and again, you can possibly add some language there, Roseanne, to ensure that stakeholders have
Access
the
to
most
the most
recent,
updated information.
updated information, so that it's clear that our intent is not to be opaque in our procedures, but rather to ensure that everyone has the latest and most up-to-date information. I like the way you said that.
Okay, somebody record that.
Roseanne, do you want to have one more go at this?
Roseanne, do you have that language?
Okay, hold
Just want to
on.
make sure that.
All right, so the motion is oppose unless amended, and the amendment is to to say that we're supportive of the idea to post the meeting materials within 10 days prior to the meeting, but allow for revisions to the meeting materials so that stakeholders and the board have access to the most up-to-date information for their discussion.
Do you need to start that amendment part, to direct staff to work with the author too? Is that? do you
No,
need that?
it's part of the position in
Okay.
this case. Yeah. So we're fine.
That's my motion.
And that's what I seconded.
Roseanne, and if we just put the word in there, and I think it's the most important thing, is to allow for transparency. And I believe that that's the root of this group that's proposing the legislation, is crying no transparency. And I think it's counterproductive to do as they're asking to do. So we're trying to be transparent. And you can't do that.
I will work the word transparency in there.
That's what they're screaming for. And
Yeah.
I agree. I agree with
Yeah.
We could throw in the word accountability too.
Do we have any additional comment before we call for the vote?
No.
Roseanne,
All right.
where are we squeezing transparency in that motion?
probably at the end, I'll say making this change will allow for maximum transparency or something like that at the end. So you could just, leave it at the end, and then I'm going to make it into something that's readable and looks nice. But
Thank you. I'll
that's
work
the
with you on
gist.
that. Okay, here's the vote. Jonathan Maddox?
Yes.
Ross Ehrlich? Yes. John Sovic?
Yes.
Max Disposti?
Yes.
Betty Conley?
Yes.
Deborah Brown?
Yes.
Wendy Strack?
Yes.
Dr. Leah Brew?
Yes.
Christina Wong? Motion carries.
Well, that was a little more complicated than we had anticipated. Oh, boy. Thank you, Roseanne, again, for all your work on that.
Thank the members, too.
And thank everybody. Yeah, that was a really good discussion. Let's do an update on board-sponsored and board-monitored legislation, Roseanne.
Okay. So we are currently in the process of pursuing 3 legislative proposals. AB 2363 by Assemblymember Arambula is our practice setting definitions bill, so that is moving forward. We're doing some minor technical amendments just based on the drafting, but you'll see that start to move. AB 2142 by Assemblymember Medina is our fee increase bill proposal, and so that has been introduced as well. One thing that has not been introduced yet is our omnibus bill proposal. That'll be through the Senate Business and Professions Committee, and that'll make the minor non-technical changes. They're allowed to introduce those outside of the normal bill introduction window, so those usually come a little later. And then we're in the process of watching and monitoring all bills. I'll give a full report. There were some 2-year bills that may or may not move, but we don't know yet. So I'll give a full report on bills, 2-year bills that we had positions on at the May meeting.
Okay. I don't think we need anything more on that. Update on our board rulemaking proposals. That's Christy.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so the first regulation package is the AB 2138 regulations, which we'll be talking about next, for some amendments for you to consider that would require a 15-day public notice and comment period. And these are regulations we're hoping to get into place July 1st. So Roseanne will be talking about that in the next agenda item. Our enforcement process regulations, which are amendments to our disciplinary process, including our uniform standards and disciplinary guidelines. Once the AB 2138 regulations take effect, then we will continue pursuing those changes. The regulation on exam rescoring, application abandonment, and APCC subsequent registration fee, these are all minor. These, I'm expecting a final approval on any day, and they would take effect April 1st. Our supervision-related requirements, which is would do quite a few different things, including revise the qualifications to become a supervisor, require supervisors to perform a self-assessment of qualifications and submit that assessment to the board. We're going to be strengthening supervisor training requirements and some of their responsibilities regarding supervisees and documentation, making the supervision requirements consistent across the professions. So there's a number of changes. Some of them are phased in, but they are major. And so these have been noticed to the public, and we have our public hearing later this month. And so they're, about halfway through the process, I guess you could say at this point. So we're hoping there are some there are some specific dates in the bill for the phase-in, but I'm expecting things to flow as they should, as far as timelines go. Our continuing education regulations, which were approved by the board in November 2019. I've got those prepared for initial review, but I'm working with the budget office because there have been some changes to how they want our budget documents prepared for regulations. So we're going to be meeting on this to discuss, and they're taking a look at what I've drafted so far. But this would make it looks like major, but it's really not all that major. There's a lot here of little details here about continuing education, and additional training requirements are being addressed as well. So those are things that some training that people have to have prior to licensure, such as human sexuality, child abuse reporting, just updating the content requirements. Those haven't been updated in a long time, and putting some consistency in terms of course providers. As far as CE goes, most of the changes are pertaining to CE waivers, which somebody can get if they have a disability that's affected their ability to do CE, or if they're a caregiver for someone who's totally disabled and that's affected their ability. And some other sort of minor changes. So that is, again, I'm working on getting that into the DCA initial review process. So that's a ways off from going through the entire process, but we'll keep you posted. The other one that was approved by the board in November 2019 has to do with exam waiting periods, professional corporations, accrediting agencies, and equivalent degrees. These are all minor changes. And so this is the next package that I'll be preparing for initial review. And I've started drafting some things, but I'm trying to focus on the CE package because that's a more higher priority package. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. So Roseanne, I think we're going to loop back to you with 2138.
Okay. Hey, before I get started, this is a.
You know, if we, can I clarify here? We had talked about doing this after lunch, but at this point, it's 20 to 12, and this is the last item on the agenda, and it's not going to be a long item. So it seems reasonable to just go ahead and move through it and allow everyone to be done. Would you like to take a 5-minute break to go? Let's take a 5-minute break. We have time. 10-minute break. Let's live it up.
And I will say, for the audience, we're going to be discussing it says amendments to proposed regulations to implement AB 2138. There's copies on the back table if you would like a copy.
Calling us back to order. Actually, just before we go back on the record, if I could ask the board members to stay for 10 minutes after we close, after we get off the record. Steve is needing to do an educational.
Yeah, I apologize. We're doing that video for kind of introducing what BBS does for our 75th anniversary. So we're just going to do a quick little mock, kind of like a mock hearing. We'll have somebody up there. She's just going to kind of pan around just to get you guys on tape, if that's okay. If you don't want to be on the tape, you can bow out and, oh, actually, Sabina, you could be the petitioner.
Well, we need an attorney.
Oh, the attorney. Okay, you can be the
We
attorney.
need an attorney. Need an ALJ who might have to sit up here.
We can let Anahita be the ALJ.
Anahita can be the ALJ. Okay.
I can be the person in trouble.
We will assign roles afterwards.
We need to have a judge.
Well, Anahita Connect is our judge.
Oh, you promote it.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And it will, Steve assures me that it will be very quick, and it's just for public service. All right, rolling right into 2138, back on the record, and Roseanne, take it away.
Yes, I just want to make sure that everybody that in the audience that wants one and all the board members have the packet to discuss this. Okay. So the amendments to propose to regulations to implement AB 2138. This proposal would make some changes to the text of the AB 2138 regulations. These changes have been negotiated between the Department of Consumer Affairs Legal Office and the Office of Administrative Law, which the Office of Administrative Law is the final agency that says yes or no on approving our regulation packages. So a little bit of background. There's a lot of background to this. At its March 2019 meeting, the board approved regulatory language to implement AB 2138. That bill was part of statutes of 2018, and it did a few things regarding our enforcement process. AB 2138 only permits a board to deny licenses on the grounds that an applicant has been convicted of a crime or subject to formal discipline if the conviction was within the 7 years of the date of the application as substantially related to the profession, except for certain serious felonies, or if the applicant has been subject to formal discipline by a licensing board within the past 7 years for professional misconduct that would have been cause for disciplinary action by the board and is substantially related. The AB 2138 statute requires each board to develop criteria to determine whether a crime is substantially related to the qualifications, functions, and duties of the profession. And the board already has this, but it needs modification because there are certain specific criteria that AB 2138 specified that needed to include. And it also prohibits a board from denying a license based on a conviction without considering evidence of rehabilitation. And it requires each board to develop criteria to evaluate rehabilitation when considering denying, suspending, or revoking a license. And again, we have in our regulations currently a criteria to evaluate rehabilitation, but we needed to add some more specifics to comply with AB 2138. And therefore, that's why regulations are necessary. So we drafted the regulation proposal. We noticed it to the public on August 16th, 2019. That began a 45-day public comment period. That ended on September 30th, 2019. On that day, we had the public hearing, and we received one written letter commenting on the proposal. The board approved the staff's proposed responses to that letter at its November 2019 board meeting and directed staff to proceed to complete the regulatory process, which we did. Part of the regulations that you saw, since these regulations had to be completed by all 38 or 40 boards and bureaus under DCA, DCA Legal prepared a basic template for all boards to use, kind of with some of the basic structure that the bill required, incorporating those amendments. And DCA Legal recommended the boards and bureaus use this template as a starting point, making modifications if needed. For each board's practice act has some sort of specifics that other boards might not have, so making basically tweaks as needed for individual circumstances. So board staff followed the directive and used the DCA template. So the Veterinary Medical Board's regulation package was sort of first out the gate. It was the first one to make it to the Office of Administrative Law in November. Our regulation packet is currently next in line to go to OAL. However, upon review of Vet Med Board's package, OAL advised the board that it would require several text changes in order for the package to go through. They advised that several of the changes are likely non-substantive, but some of them would be probably considered substantive, and they need to go back to the board for approval, and then they need to go to a 15-day public comment period. So the Veterinary Medical Board ended up withdrawing their AB 2138 regulations from OAL, and then DCA Legal and OAL worked together to negotiate what those changes would look like. Because this board and several other boards and bureaus under DCA used the original template, DCA Legal has advised us to considering incorporating the same or similar changes into our AB 2138 proposal before we move forward. And so that gets us to where we are with the revised text. That's shown in attachment A. And the sections affected, it's not all of the proposal that we're not looking at the disciplinary guidelines. Those have some minor changes. We're looking at sections 1812, 1813, and 1814. And so I'll kind of go through this. A lot of these are non-substantive, and you can kind of take a look and see that they're just grammatical changes. One of the main things in 1812 is that references to sections 4982, 4985.54, 4990.31, 4992.3, and 4999.90 were added. These are the board's, these sections authorize the board to deny, suspend, or revoke a license or registration for acts that the board's licensing law considers unprofessional conduct, and OAL wanted those to be included in the substantial relationship criteria, so we did that. They also wanted in that section, subsection A, they wanted a definition of a license to clarify that a license means a license or registration. That conforms to something in the Business and Professions Code that's already there, section 23.7. So we made that change. Then we made some other technical changes. Going down to section 1813, we also did the same thing, added a definition of license because that's what they wanted. In 1813B, we made a minor change to strike and is presently eligible for a license because there was some feeling that that might be confusing or not clear. And then kind of getting to the main change was in 1813C. We'll see that there's some language there basically that says if you've considered the criteria in B, but the person hasn't been convicted of a crime or the applicant did not make showing of rehabilitation, then you're going to consider these next criteria. OAL felt that that was sort of a catch-all, and they didn't like the concept of a catch-all for that section. And so that they asked that we redraft it basically to list all of the circumstances in which we could go on to consider those unprofessional or those criteria for rehabilitation that are secondary to subsection B. So if they didn't make a showing of rehabilitation, if the denial was based on professional misconduct, or if it's based on one of the grounds specified in the practice acts, and so on and so forth. And that would make it more clear that that rehabilitation criteria is considered for all application denials, regardless of the grounds if they stem from Section 480. Moving on, we added professional misconduct in a couple of places in subsection C. We deleted a reference to 480 of the Business and Professions Code per OAL's request. And then in section 1814, we again added the definition of license and also a definition of a licensee. And then we made the same changes to subsection C in that section that I just discussed. And it's a very similar structure and reasoning for that's the same. And then finally in 1814D, that's the last kind of significant one, we deleted section 11522 of the Government Code because actually our section 4990.30 of the code overrides that. So they've pointed that out. And so that's where we are today. Like I said, we're also amending a couple of other sections and the disciplinary guidelines. We don't think we're going to have a concern there. I'm just checking one thing really quick. Yeah. So we made these revisions and DCA Legal asked OAL to take a look at it last week, and they got back to us yesterday. And they did a quick review because we would like to not have to bring this back again, but OAL's ultimately the final say on that. And they said that they might have a concern with subsection C. They didn't exactly indicate what that concern might be, but we think that it's possible that we cite articles there of the code, which are kind of a higher level rather than citing a bunch of individual sections. Each article contains certain sections. So in the motion, we're going to ask that we do a non-substantive change in 1813C and 1814C to, if OAL wants, cite the sections in those articles instead of the articles themselves. I know that's really technical, but we would have to do that in a motion. So I guess I'll open it up for discussion at this point, and then we can talk about what the motion would be.
Sorry. So it looks like the apart from all these minor changes, the most substantive is really 1813C. So now my trouble, since I'm not an attorney, I don't get trained in the law language. it's very difficult to understand that section of them because it's all these not. So what are you trying to say? So I wonder, I'm looking at Sabina. I know that, it's kind of like a pretty standardized language that all boards need to adopt. But I just want to say that, if I am the person who read the law, this is very confusing to me. I understand the content, but I do not think that particular paragraph really clearly state that. So I don't know if there is any room to. I thank you, Sabina, for that face. And I think it might be an uphill battle, but at the same time, I just want to clarify.
Well, like Roseanne said before, there was language in there before that was basically if A above doesn't apply, then these things, then you have to do this, right? And they didn't like that, so then that's what created additional words, I guess, if you will, and extending that sentence and making it a little bit more wordy. And I think maybe, in their quest to make it more clarified, it may have just made it more wordy and maybe confusing to some people. That was the catch-all they did not like.
Right. So, now I guess that the heart of the question is that, do we have to accept it as it is, basically? And then there's not much room to, to improve because, it's just confusing.
We have, and a lot of boards have gone through this, everybody's tried to recraft the language and redo everything and try to make it better. And this is what OAL is suggesting, and they are the ones who will
approve it. They need to, we need to go through them.
Right.
So, okay. I just express my concern.
Christina, at the end of the day, whatever we submit, this is what I would say in just very simplistic terms. This is our best guess at what would be successful based on conversations that we've had with DCA Legal. DCA Legal has had with OAL sort of offline, just to try to shepherd this process through. At the end of the day, it's going to be the attorney at OAL that reviews this language, and they will either like it or they don't. If they don't, they'll kick it back. And in our experience in the past, they have always provided a suggested revision that has a high probability of succeeding. So,
and you can be proud that you guys will probably be the first ones through OAL. And proud.
We could actually implement this on time.
That you will be probably the only ones moving forward on time, hopefully. We're going to go out for, if you can probably see in your motion, it is going out back for a 15-day comment period. And then they can continue the process with OAL.
So basically,
Could someone, I'm sorry, could somebody just tell me what that means in lay language? Just that, what does that mean in lay language? That
Let me,
if the applicant has not completed the criminal sins at issue without yes.
I can do that. So basically, if you look at B above, if they have a criminal conviction, you consider B. And then you have to basically either say, okay, that's good, we consider them rehabilitated, or no, we don't consider them rehabilitated. If you don't consider them rehabilitated, then you go to C. So basically it's saying if B doesn't apply, then C, and then there's this extra set of rehabilitation criteria that you have to consider.
And what C is saying is that while the applicant was on probation, they did not follow their parole or probation as it was defined. That's basically
Right.
What that
It's
says.
if they've had like a probation violation.
They had a violation, so now we're at step 2, and we've got to let's consider this a little bit more.
Got it. Thank you.
Just really small clarification question. Is the word registrant consistent across all of the licenses we monitor?
Yes.
Okay.
And just a reminder, I know you already have a motion in your packet. There'll be, I'm going to have to add on to that motion for when Roseanne talked about in 1813C and 1814C, there's some articles referenced, and we're guessing we might have to change those to those sections within the articles that are applicable. And so we kind of want to do a little add-on motion at the end to delegate that authority to the executive officer to just add in those sections instead of using the article number those sections that are in the article, we might just have to substitute.
So as a board, so I guess the question is, and we may not be there, are we saying at this point that we agree with it as it's written and we're going to move forward, or is that
That would be this edited language today,
Sure.
with my little caveat of maybe instead of article, what is it, 3.5 or article 2, 13 point, we might have to put section numbers instead in 1813C and 1814C.
So are we ready for a motion? I guess that's the question.
Do we need more discussion?
Do we need anything from the public?
Is there any public comment on this item?
All right.
I think we're ready for a motion.
Go ahead, Karen.
I'll make that motion.
Oh, so did you want me to go ahead and read what's in the
Yes,
packet?
please.
Okay. So the motion would be to approve the proposed text for a 15-day public comment period. Delegate to the executive officer the authority to adopt the proposed regulatory changes if there are no adverse comments received during the public comment period, following established procedures and processes in doing so, and to delegate to the executive officer the authority to make any technical or non-substantive changes that may be required in completing the rulemaking file. And in addition, here's my add-on. We'd like to delegate the authority to the executive officer to make, possibly, if requested by OAL, to make the article references in 1813C and 1814C to change them to the sections within those articles as non-substantive changes, again, if requested by OAL.
That's my motion.
And there you go.
And I second that.
Christina writes good.
Couldn't have written it better herself.
You guys ready for the vote? Or do you want some discussion from the?
Do we have any additional board member discussion? No, it looks like we're ready for a vote.
Okay.
Oh,
Jonathan Mack?
I already asked for public comment, I think. I did, yep, they're nodding. No public comment, then let's go ahead and move forward for a vote.
Jonathan Maddox?
Yes.
Ross Ehrlich?
Yes.
John Sovek?
Yes.
Max Dispost?
Yes.
Betty Conley?
Yes.
Deborah Brown?
Yes.
Wendy Strack?
Yes.
Dr. Leo Brew?
Yes.
Christina Wong?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Yes.
All right. So we are ready, hello. We are ready for, hang on here, public comment. Public comment for, I've got it. Public comment for items not on the agenda. Jonathan, did you have a?
Yeah, so I'd like to sort of have a conversation about sort of the impact of COVID-19 on sort of our planning meetings moving forward. I mean, this is becoming a significant public health crisis, and so I don't know what we should do in terms of looking at any P&A meetings, the May meetings, if this doesn't clear up, and sort of how and who directs us about whether we should actually be convening. Because one of the actual suggestions is that there be public distancing, and so I think bringing board members together and the public in a very confined space might be contraindicated. So I don't know, I'm wondering what the next steps are, because this is spiraling out of control.
So in response to that, I did put something out last week to staff about just some very basic common sense things. Wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. If you're sick, don't tough it out, stay home, those types of things. At this point, although the governor has declared a state of emergency, we don't have any guidance at this point about gathering, but out of an abundance of caution, we've had hand sanitizer at the front, and again, I think that's, it's precautionary. I know Orange County is currently under they declared an emergency due to the virus. I think if we see more counties doing that same declaration, it would behoove us to consider, gathering in those counties. But I think we're going to have to be really fluid about what is occurring. At this point in time, I think we're looking at Southern California for our next meeting. We'll see. I mean, if between now and the next few weeks it becomes an epicenter, then, we may want to revisit that about where we meet.
Well, and again, we're not meeting until May. middle of May, which is
Right.
over 2 months from now.
Right.
The landscape is shifting very quickly, and who knows, in 2 months, we might be in a very different landscape. So I think while absolutely hear the concern, I think we have to just be flexible and take the information as it comes and adjust as appropriate.
I agree. And for all of us that might be getting on a flight, it's not a bad idea to carry travel size hand sanitizers. And if you want to go even a step further, some of the sanitizer wipes, just out of an abundance of caution, be healthy, get your rest, drink lots of fluids, all the stuff that they tell us to do, just to stay healthy in general. And then, we'll just see what happens.
And if you're sick, stay home.
Yes. Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, though. I think we're all kind of trying to stay on top of it. Yes, sir.
I, first of all, want to thank all of you for your time and your commitment to this board. And having served on other boards myself, I know how much this can be disruptive to the rest of your lives. So first of all, my appreciation. I also appreciate posting the supervision meeting materials well ahead of the 10 days that you're meeting on the 24th, and I'm hoping to avoid having to come up here on the 24th myself. I have submitted comments, and Christy has acknowledged that, but I want to reiterate my points that there's a concern of the continuing supervisor education to continue supervising that is in doing it through consultation. And my concern is that consultation does not necessarily hold the same teeth and status of getting continuing education through CEs, and that consultation groups can often end up being people discussing personal issues and complaints around supervisees rather than necessarily furthering their supervision skills. And to leave a space in our regulation about supervision requirements to better supervision, my suggestion is to remove that option from continuing supervisor development and to have some sort of stronger regulated requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh. No further comment, then we'll move on to suggestions for future agenda items. I didn't see that hand over there, I'm sorry.
I don't know why.
So we're back still on public comments for items not on the
No, I went.
future agenda. Okay, future agenda items, sorry. Okay, great.
I'd like to propose that we consider a subcommittee to start working with the DAG to educate about addiction and substance abuse, so that we might be able to start addressing strategic plan area 3.3.
All right, thank you.
And based on I have two things. Based on the previous comment, I think it's important for us to put on a future agenda item about the discussion of supervision and that possibility of consultation, just because we can't discuss it today. So,
Okay.
And then another item I have, I'm not sure if the board can help with this or not. We've started a Latinx sort of program where our students are doing bilingual Spanish and English therapy. And one of the things that's been happening and has also been coming to our attention in at least Orange County is a lot of those students who are bilingual are asked to go into other people's sessions and be interpreters. And interpreting is an entirely different profession. So it's one thing to sit down with your own client and try to have a conversation in another language. But to ask that same person to be in someone else's session or to do some interpreting without interpreter training has its risks. So I'm not sure where the purview of the board would be with this, or if we want to have something in regulations about it, to be clear about it, to protect both the supervisee, because that's often where this is happening, as well as the consumer.
So I think it's worth a comment, worth a conversation. It
Yes.
may be one of those that it ends up being.
Not be our purview.
Code of ethics, might be somewhere else, but it's worth having a conversation. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Any other,
And
Kim?
just follow up, Leah, do you have, if you could send me sort of a summary of that, and then we can start looking at some research? Okay.
So we'll get that on an agenda. Okay, I think we are, oh, one more, Christina?
So I remember, I don't remember particularly which meeting, but I think, I proposed, to have a little presentation about, the different level of the law, to talk about like, the criminal law and the it basically it's just kind of like a little more overview about like the structure of the regulations, and how, anyway, I sort of remember that, but just kind of like just remind that we want to have that. Yeah, do you remember that, Sabina? We
Yeah,
had
like an
that.
overview of legislation versus regulations
Yes.
versus maybe
That's
board
it.
policy.
Okay.
That one.
I'm
Yes,
sure
thank you.
Okay, so we have that as,
Could or have done something
Yeah.
like that.
okay, well,
Yeah, we can work
I
on
think we
something.
have that, okay?
I think it was something to do with penal code too, like the 290, wasn't it?
Yes, because there's so many different codes.
That's,
That
yeah,
290 is changing.
that's kind of in flux, yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to wait till after that's all in effect and to even address that, but we can address just general statutes versus regulation.
Yes, I think that.
And the regulatory process.
Right, yeah.
Pressure for some of us who have been around for a while.
Much,
All
much
right.
of that is in the board member procedure manual. Sorry, and we're revising it. The new members have the draft version of the new manual and board member training. So we're in the process of getting that republished, and once we get the board member procedure manual done, we'll share it with everybody.
I think that's also a very wonderful education piece, for everybody, that, yeah, because, when, especially, we do so much legislative advocacy. And so even just to have, that opportunity to educate the public would be super wonderful. So, yeah, just want to follow up on that one. And thanks for reminding me. I'm kind of like out for lunch already. So.
Okay. All right, thank you, everyone. With that, we are going to bring our meeting to a close, and we are going to adjourn at 12:15. So, thank you.